Chapter 181, You Must Come Tonight. Natsu's confession to Lucy? Seriously, only Chess would accept an SS-class request so casually. Lucy sighed softly, lying across a table, envy shining in her pretty eyes. In a few short sentences, the request had been confirmed, and Mira had already run upstairs to start the registration. An SS class, the legendary SS class. She'd only been in the guild a few months, and the highest request she'd ever encountered was the S-class Karuna Island, already terrifying enough. Lucy couldn't imagine how dangerous the higher ranks must be, or how big the rewards could get. If you're so interested, how about teaming up? I'll show you the ropes, Chess offered suddenly. Lucy thought she'd misheard at first. Only when she met Chess's confident gaze did she point to herself and stammer, Me! Yeah, is there anyone else here? He replied. That's not the point. Since when did I look that interested? She bristled, golden hair standing on end. Pointing at the request form Chess held, she insisted, This is SS class. SS class. It's just a request. What's the big deal? Chess folded the form with a smug smile. Well then, it's happily decided. He knew the council would soon be assigning the mission to subjugate the 6 demon generals to the 4 great guilds. While they still had time, he wanted to give Lucy some serious training. Ideally, she'd learn to use the power of the Zodiac Star Dress properly. As for the risks, Chess, who was at least mid-tier Saint 10, was completely confident he could control whatever came up. At the very least, keeping Lucy safe wouldn't be a problem. Don't just make decisions like that on your own, Lucy snapped, a tiny spray of spittle flying as she protested. She did need extra money for rent. Taking requests would help, and teaming with Chess would spare her the awkwardness of not going with Natsu, as she'd told Mira earlier. But this was an SS-class request, where you could lose your life at any moment. Oh, what a shame. Chess casually swiped the spatter off his cheek with one hand, feigning regret. I was thinking, if you're willing, we could split the 18 million J reward evenly. 18 million? Lucy's eyes went huge. 18 million J. At the mention of money, her resolve evaporated. She sidled up to Chess shamelessly. Chess, when do we leave? Let's go now. Hey, Lucy, I smell money in your eyes, Happy teased. Nails the truth. The others nearby had heard the whole thing and crowded in. Hey, Chess, Lucy can't go with you. I want to meet her tonight. Natsu blurted out. So the person Natsu's been talking about is Lucy? Someone teased. Kid, you really like her, don't you? Isn't that a little much? They're having an affair. Marcus chimed in with a wink. They all piled on, and Lucy turned bright red, remembering Mira's earlier analysis. She stumbled backwards, terrified. Tonight? A confession? No, she wasn't prepared. We'll just leave tomorrow then. We can prepare, Chess laughed. He alone knew why Natsu wanted to meet Lucy that night. Hearing Lucy's frantic heartbeat and watching her overthink the situation made him want to laugh. Oh, okay, Natsu agreed immediately. Hey, before you make plans, maybe ask me, the person involved, first. Lucy exploded. She felt like a cheap commodity. So Lucy, you must come tonight, Natsu said without a hint of reading the room. Lucy. Time flew. Night came, the moon bright and stars sparse. Magnolia South Plaza Park, beneath the 100-year-old tree. Despite saying she didn't like the idea and insisting she'd refuse even if they were partners, Lucy found herself having Caesar style her hair for a formal occasion and slipping into an elegant black dress. She told herself she'd take Natsu's confession seriously, though she probably couldn't even understand her own motives. Truly dense heroine behavior, enough to make any viewer anxious. Yo, Lucy, you made it? Natsu had been waiting under the tree. He held an iron shovel and blinked at the dressed-up Lucy. Why are you dressed like that? Seriously. Because this is important. Lucy shot back, glaring at his casual clothes. To confess to a girl dressed like that and show up in work clothes, he had terrible timing. It doesn't matter what I'm wearing. Hurry up and call out the gorilla maid, Natsu said expectantly. Lucy, at a loss for how to politely refuse. What did you say? That spirit that's good at digging holes. What's her name? Right, Virgo. Her name is Virgo, and didn't you have something important to tell me? Heh, this is it. Natsu tapped the ground with his shovel, grinning. I heard the old man buried everyone's embarrassing childhood photos here. With Virgo's help, we won't have to dig so hard. Lucy. Hurry and call her out. If Gray gets here first, it'll be bad, he warned. Bad my ass. Go to hell. Lucy snapped. Slap! A crisp sound echoed through the quiet park. Realizing she'd been overthinking everything, Lucy burst into tears and fled, looking like she wanted to die of embarrassment. She'd come hoping for a handsome, meaningful moment, and instead left crushed but still secretly yearning for romance. Natsu stood frozen, holding the side of his face where she'd slapped him, blinking in stunned silence. In his own way, he was a little regretful too. Meanwhile, at Chess's house, Chess and the black magician girl who'd snuck out were lounging on the sofa, laughing over a slightly yellowed photo album. The embarrassing childhood photos Natsu had been after hadn't ended up with him after all. Chess had intercepted them. This old fox had beaten them all at their own game. Chapter 182, Departure. Heading to the Boendari Forest. The next morning, Chess arrived at the guild early, grinning as he dropped a stack of embarrassing photos on the counter for Mira to see. The pictures, taken from under a tree the previous day, showed a young Mira pulling faces with a childlike Urza, an entire array of comically ugly expressions. Mira only smiled at them, a little nostalgic. She quietly tucked the photos away, then swapped the carefully prepared breakfast she'd set out for Chess with a hard French baguette. "Chess, you'll eat this today," she declared, hands on her hips. "You brought my Black History photos," Chess protested, eyeing the baguette like it might bite back. It was bone-dry and stodgy, useless as food, but perfect for bashing someone's skull if needed. "So this is my thank you present," Mira continued. "You show me my childhood horror show and then expect delicious food? Dream on. And the guildmaster, sneaking around taking pictures like that, deserves an extra strong, extra spicy cup of tea as punishment." Outside, in front of the magazine stall, Guildmaster Makarov, who'd gotten up early to buy the latest beauty photo album, felt a strange tightening in his gut. "Odd," he muttered. "Why do I feel like something bad's going to happen today?" Whatever the premonition was, it vanished the moment he bought the magazine. He had his prize, after all. Back inside the guild, Chess gnawed on the baguette with regret. After a few bites, it was obvious. Compared to the warm, tasty breakfasts he'd grown used to, this thing was awful. Mira, pretending to be stern, kept up the show for a moment. "This is the standard from now on," she said. But she softened, took the dry loaf from him, and brought out the original breakfast again, deciding, on principle of not wasting food, to save the baguette for Elfman, who hadn't arrived yet. Ches brightened and scarfed his food down without ceremony. Mira propped her chin on her hands behind the counter and watched him with a half smile. "You don't have to eat so fast," she teased. "I'm not going back on my word." After breakfast, they passed the time talking, mostly about the SS rank request they'd accepted this time. Half an hour later, Lucy came barreling in, dressed in blue and white outdoor gear, cheeks flushed. Sorry, Chess. I overslept," she bowed, embarrassed. She hadn't been able to fall asleep after the commotion with Natsu the night before. Her head had been full of wild, disorganized thoughts until Lyra's song finally soothed her to sleep. "It's fine," Chess said. "A little early or late doesn't matter. Besides," he looked at her with a pointed grin, "how was your date with Natsu last night? Must have been wonderful, right?" "Pleasant my foot," Lucy exploded. "Who asks a girl out in the middle of the night to dig in the dirt?" She huffed, then clapped her hands and said firmly, "No, we weren't on a date to begin with." "Really?" Chess teased. "Everyone in the guild seems to think otherwise. Maybe you're just slow on the uptake." By the time the teasing died down, Mira had brought Lucy a steaming glass of milk. "You haven't eaten yet, have you? Drink this first," she said kindly. Lucy took it gratefully. The next exchange came out of left field. "By the way, Lucy, how many kids are you planning to have with Natsu? I heard Juvia wants 30 with Gray." Lucy choked on her milk and sprayed it everywhere. "What? No, I'm not thinking about any of that. And why compare me to Juvia?" "Because Natsu and Gray are always trying to one-up each other," Chess said with a laugh. "How does that involve me?" Lucy trailed off, exhausted by the discussion. Chess ended up wiping milk off his own face as Lucy spent most of breakfast explaining, half to herself, what she actually felt about Natsu. By the end, even she wasn't sure whether she liked him or not. "Ready?" Chess asked, standing. He led the way toward the guild's upper terraces. "Huh? Why aren't we going out the front door?" Lucy blinked. "The front door's too slow. We'll save time by flying on the Castle Guardian Dragon. Chess said, turning back. Lucy's jaw dropped. You can do that? She'd spent the previous day studying the specific location of the Boandari forest, planning the route and mentally preparing to pay for every last travel cost, only to be told they'd take the guild's dragon instead. It was a shock to her diligence and sense of initiative. Mira, however, waved and smiled as Chess and Lucy strode off. Have a good trip. On the terrace, Chess raised his hand and sent a surge of magic into a glowing circle. Blue light fanned out like wings, and with a gust of wind, the castle guardian dragon emerged. Up close, its jagged teeth and fierce scales were intimidating. Lucy, who'd heard of dragons all her life, felt that instinctive fear of something legendary and massive. The dragon seemed to sense her unease. It gave a low, gentle cry, folded its huge wings, and lowered its neck in a friendly bow. Under all that ferocity, it was unexpectedly warm. Nice to meet you. I'm Lucy, she said, stepping forward to introduce herself. The dragon blinked once, placid and amiable. They climbed onto the dragon's back. When its wings unfurled, a rush of wind blew across the terrace, and in a blink it streaked into the sky, leaving Magnolia's rooftops far below. Unlike the last time Chess had used it, the time that had made Mira clutch on for dear life, the dragon this time opened a magic barrier to block the headwind. It was a stable, smooth method of flight, though it consumed more mana than its old playful trick. Wow, Lucy breathed, eyes wide at the shrinking town below. The view was more spectacular than she'd imagined. Flying magic is practical, Chess said. If you're interested, you could learn from the Black Magician Girl. Really? Lucy's face lit up, then she deflated. But it looks so hard. I can barely handle Stardress right now. True, Chess agreed. Mastering Stardress is already huge. You're being awful, Chess, Lucy pouted. You could have been more tactful. You don't necessarily need flying magic, Chess pointed out. Natsu flies by using his flames like thrusters. Gajeel can fly by manipulating iron. Magic has so many possibilities. Do I look like someone who can do tricks like that? Lucy asked, despairing of herself. You're our guild's only star spirit mage, Chess said seriously. One day, you'll be the strongest star spirit mage. Lucy's cheeks colored. Chess's praise coming from someone as strong as him was heady. She let herself enjoy the thought for a moment. Strongest, she whispered, almost believing it. Not far off, Chess said. There's an opportunity right in front of you. Let's see how far you can go on this SS request. Okay, leave it to the strongest star spirit mage. Me, Lucy declared, bright and determined. Then she blinked. Chess, what do you mean? That's right, Chess cut in. I won't interfere with this request unless you fail. Huh. Chapter 183, Lake Monster. Bali Forest lay in the northern reaches of the Fiore Kingdom, a vast, untamed wood that belonged to no nation. Ferocious monsters roamed its depths, and even some of the towering trees seemed to possess a will of their own. Under normal circumstances, humans didn't set foot in it. Only magicians like Chess took the occasional request that led them inside. According to the map attached to the request, we need to go to the farthest northern part of the forest to find the client's village. Chess said at the forest entrance, studying the parchment in his hand and tracing the route they'd follow. Who would live in a place this terrifying and be able to offer such a big reward? Lucy asked, eyes wide as she peered into the dark mass of trees. She had just watched a mantis the size of a house leap from the undergrowth and tear a gigantic snake, a tree-disguised monstrosity, into pieces. Even along the forest's edge, creatures of that scale appeared. If Chess hadn't been there, she would have fled already. SS-class requests have to be approved by the council, Chess replied, unfazed. There's no reason to doubt the reward. He folded the map and brushed a speck of dirt off his sleeve. Think of it another way. They can offer such a big payout because they live in a dangerous place. That makes the client sound even scarier, Lucy muttered, hugging herself. In her imagination, the client became a red-haired, fang-toothed giant, taller than a mountain. It had been rash to accept an SS-class request with Chess, she thought. Unless, well, whether they're scary or not will be clear when we meet them, Chess said lightly. As the fairy tale magician with the most S-class requests completed in a year, he'd met plenty of clients who looked monstrous, but weren't. Lucy's nerves were natural for a novice. Chess, can you call the city guard's winged dragon again? Flying over would be much easier. Lucy brightened. She wanted to save time, but at heart she was avoiding the threats in the unknown forest. Her instincts for danger, honed by teaming with Natsu, Gray, and Urza, were surprisingly sharp for someone so timid. Chess shook his head. It flew most of the day. It's tired and said it's going back to get some sleep. He'd brought Lucy along to train her. If he let her fly and never learned to face danger, the purpose would be lost. Lucy wanted to protest, then change tactics. What about flying magic? You can do that, right, Chess? That works. Chess nodded and began to form a shimmering circle of dark golden light. He bent forward slightly. I'll go ahead, see you at the destination. Chato Mat! Lucy suddenly bolted faster than seemed possible and clung to Chess's thigh like glue. Leaving her alone in this place would be a disaster. If she had to be in the forest, she wanted to be with him. Chess dispelled the magic with a small smile. He had expected this reaction. Don't worry, the other magicians who took this request walked in on foot, he said. Lucy loosened her grip but froze at the next detail. Mira said many people got lost in the forest before they even saw the client and were never heard from again. That's even more terrifying. Her heart leapt again. Chess laughed and patted his chest. I'm here. Trusting him, Lucy stepped forward into the woods. Chess let her walk in front to see how far she'd get, staying close behind to watch for danger. A narrow path split the overgrown ground. Whether it had been worn by magicians who'd taken requests over the years or by villagers coming and going, it was the only clear route. On either side, trees dozens of meters tall reared up, their hanging branches like waiting serpents. A cold breath of forest air rustled the leaves. Something large stirred in the undergrowth, unseen. Lucy's hand hovered near the celestial spirit keys at her waist. For half an hour, they encountered nothing worse than a few jumpy mushroom monsters that startled her, but nothing savage. About a third of the way in, they passed a murky lake. Chess, who'd been enjoying the scenery, paused. Since they'd entered the area, the usual chorus of insects and birds had gone strangely quiet. A faint fishy smell hung in the air. Whoever, or whatever, was there had cleared the place of other creatures. Chess glanced at Lucy walking ahead. She still looked around with little awareness of the change in atmosphere. Her vigilance was too low. He was about to warn her when a soft chime rang and a celestial spirit magic circle flared at Lucy's feet. Taurus materialized, a muscular, cow-like man holding a double-bladed axe. Lucy's face crumpled into a mixture of relief and exasperation. Taurus? What are you doing popping out all of a sudden? She snapped. She was already keyed up. She wasn't in the mood for his usual pervy antics. Taurus's expression was uncharacteristically serious, though his voice remained lecherously blunt. Lucy, hurry and take off your clothes. Lucy blinked. I sense danger, Taurus explained. I need to prepare a honey trap. Lucy's mouth twitched. Can you try using normal thought patterns for once? Wait, you said danger. Before he could finish, the placid lake erupted. Water exploded skyward and a massive gray-brown fish suddenly leapt free, jaws open, reeking and dripping with blood as it lunged straight for Lucy. Seriously, it really showed up. Lucy screamed, shadowed by the creature's bulk, but still managed another retort. How is a honey trap supposed to work against that thing? Where was Taurus? Lucy glanced over, expecting some help, but he'd already returned to his usual business. Fortunately, her hand was always on her keys. She yanked a golden key free and flung it into the splashing water. Open! Gate of the Water-Bearer! Aquarius! Aquarius erupted from the lake, swinging her water bottle like a club. The surge of water swept the strange fish cleanly away, blasting it hundreds of meters off. You disgusting brat! You dragged me up out of that filthy water. What, your butt's itching again? She snapped. She'd shifted into her scolding big sister persona, her azure fishtail slapping the ground in irritation. Maybe it was because her date had been interrupted. She wasn't exactly gracious to her summoner right then. Then again, she rarely was. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know I was wrong. Lucy babbled, bowing and apologizing over and over. She didn't dare cross the proud Aquarius. Watching from a distance, Chess kept shaking his head. He knew that was how Aquarius and Lucy interacted, but every time he saw her scolding expression, he couldn't help but find it vaguely amusing. That sharp, tangled, more-than-family bond was something Lucy shared with Aquarius like no one else. Lucy could almost call her mom. Chess's eyes narrowed, though. Whatever had happened in the last few moments, her speed opening the gate, the instant assessment of the situation, Lucy had improved. She was plainly better than before. If she ever ran into Vidaldus, the rockman from the Three Crows Assassination Guild, she wouldn't be so easily overpowered. As a prodigy steeped for years in the path of magic, the Black Magician's cultivation guide had indeed paid off. He was still smiling at that thought when a hard, fierce gaze cut across him. Aquarius, having finished scolding, floated over and squinted. "Are you the dead card guy Leo keeps talking about?" she asked. "Aha, probably?" Chess scratched his head, cursed Loki silently for his jokes, then grinned and stuck out his hand. "Nice to meet you. I'm Chess. You could say I'm the big brother of that idiot over there." He had Jude's tacit approval for his relationship with Lucy, so he wasn't shy about playing the role. "Idiot girl? Okay, I approve of you." Aquarius's fierce expression melted into a smile neither Lucy nor Chess had seen before. "I am Aquarius of the Aquarius Star Spirit." Lucy watched them shake hands, her mouth twitching. What a strange way to give approval. "You're my star spirit. Shouldn't you be scolding him for calling me an idiot?" she thought. But when Chess and Aquarius looked at her together, the snappy retort on the tip of her tongue turned into a helpless smile. Better not make trouble. She couldn't afford to offend either of them. After warning Lucy, "If you call me out again, I'll kill you," Aquarius dissolved into points of light. Lucy froze, too frightened to call back. Before she could exhale, the ground shuddered violently. Trees tilted and toppled. Falling leaves and tumbling rocks filled the air. From the undergrowth came a vast shadow and a rank stench, a purple spider the size of a small mountain. Its front legs were like tree trunks, bristling with spear-like hairs. "It appeared again," Lucy cried, pulling out her golden key. "Open! Gate of Virgo, Virgo." Virgo materialized in chains and a maid outfit. She looked up at the spider and in a trembling voice said, "Princess, I'm sorry. Punish me." "That quick? I haven't even ordered anything," Lucy protested. "To handle a monster that size, I can't hold my current form for long." "Fine, just defeat it quickly," Lucy snapped. "Understood." With a flash of purple light, Virgo shifted from delicate maid into a bulky, red-eyed ape warrior. As the spider reared to strike, Virgo spun, drilling into the ground and breaking the beast's balance. The spider's heavy legs slammed into the rocks near Lucy and shattered them into pieces. Lucy leaped clear, muttering, "All you did was change size." "Momentum matters against big monsters," Virgo grunted. Like a mole, she dug out nearby and kept her expression fierce. "Princess, watch out behind you," Virgo warned. A buzzing sound made Lucy's scalp prickle. She turned and saw a swarm of crimson bees, each as large as a basketball, speeding her way. "Open! Gate of Sagittarius! Sagittarius!" she cried. Golden light flared and Sagittarius, in a horse costume, stepped out and saluted the nearby lake with his odd greeting. "Moshi Moshi, long time no see, Lucy-sama." "We don't have time. Sagittarius, shoot him down!" Lucy pointed at the bee swarm. "Of course. I am a master archer. Moshi Moshi." Sagittarius drew his bow and loosed several arrows that cut swathes through the flying bees. "Nice shot." Lucy beamed and gave a thumbs up. Chess leaned against a massive tree, arms folded, watching Lucy's fight with a composed expression. The Black Magician girl had slipped out for some air and perched on a branch, smiling. "Not bad," she commented. She couldn't summon 2 zodiac spirits for a long time. Her pink boots swung lazily. The mood up in the tree was calm, far removed from Lucy's flustered, scrambling energy. Chess tilted his head, though, eyes tracking a cyclopean figure moving from another direction. "This time, it's not her multi-summoning ability we're training," he murmured. Even if Lucy got better at keeping multiple spirits, she was still physically weak herself. Chess, a fellow summoner, understood how lethal that flaw could be. Against surprising, high-speed enemies like Jalal, or when the opponent had prior knowledge, her margin for error was terrifyingly small. He planned to watch until she was forced to use the star dress. He wanted to push her to a tipping point. His prediction held. The Cyclops, huge, powerful, and monstrous, closed in. Its soft swing could shatter trees. Every step left a half-meter crater. Dodging its basic blows was already a struggle. Lucy was hanging on by bursts of potential. "Use the star dress," the Black Magician girl called. "Even that little dog constellation won't help otherwise." "Why does every monster in this forest want me?" Lucy panted, running. From the odd fish in the lake to the beasts living in Bondali Forest, none of them seemed to notice Chess. They only targeted her. The local monsters, smarter than ordinary fauna, had learned to pick fights with those they could provoke. The rest ended up as overgrown grass on their graves. Virgo and Sagittarius were held by their foes, but looked calm. Normally, they'd beat their monsters quickly and prioritize Lucy's safety, but they sensed Chess's intentions and weren't in any rush. Lucy found herself cornered, a Cyclops looming before her, her back against a large tree. The Cyclops reared, a fist of dense white fur poised in the air. Lucy inhaled to try the star dress magic again. A golden magic circle bloomed, and magic power pooled into an updraft, tugging at her clothes. Just as Chess hoped it might be working, the circle snapped and dissolved into scattering light. The attempt failed. The Cyclops' expression turned to fury, and it drove that massive fist down with everything behind it. The Black Magician Girl, perched on the branch, raised her staff. The trajectory of the monster's blow altered silently. The fist carved a tearing gust across the ground and grazed Lucy's side, slamming down and pulverizing earth and stone inches from where she had stood. Lucy made a face of relief. She had been lucky. She spun and bolted, and the chase resumed. But before she could put much distance between herself and the Cyclops, a thick vine snaked up her ankle and began to climb, tightening with a will of its own. The monster's shadow fell over her. Lucy struggled, but the vine was too strong. The Cyclops moved its foot directly above her. If it stomped, she'd be crushed flat. She glanced instinctively at Chess, Virgo, and Sagittarius, now free, had their eyes on the scene, ready to assist. Training was training, but they could not joke when her life was at stake. Chess still stood with his arms crossed, impassive. He wanted to push her to the limit. Only a life-or-death crisis could unlock the greatest potential of a star spirit magician. No time to argue. When their eyes met, Lucy read everything. Why he'd brought her to an SS request, why he felt this pressure was necessary. She felt small and terrible. Chess trusted her more than anyone, and she had been assuming that being with him meant safety. Her pupils tightened. Even as the vine choked and her face drained of color, her fear steadied into resolve. With Chess, even if she failed, she wouldn't die, but she didn't want to disappoint him. "I won't let you down, Chess. I can do this," Lucy roared, clutching her golden key. The Cyclops' foot came down like a mountain, crushing rock and throwing up dust and splintered wood. For a heartbeat it seemed over, until the dust cleared and twin golden tails fluttered in the breeze. Lucy stood on the shattered ground, wielding red twin blades. Her outfit had changed, blue stripes replaced by a wide-sleeved uniform of sky blue and plain white. She had, for an instant, the heroic bearing of Urza. The Black Magician Girl hopped down from the tree, inspecting her. "Is that the complete star dress? Not bad." Chess laughed softly. Lucy hadn't noticed that he'd secretly placed the unicorn's horn card on her, an enchantment to temporarily amplify magic power. A tiny unicorn horn had briefly sprouted on her forehead. With Cancer's abilities in place, she bent her knees and exploded forward, driving her foot into the Cyclops' descending limb and launching a lightning-fast counterattack. Swish, swish, swish. Red twin blade slashes streamed like wind, cutting from calf to head. Fur fell like snow. When Lucy landed the final strike, the Cyclops' thick hair was shaved clean, leaving it more exposed than gray without his clothes. Having inherited the talents of Cancer Caesar, the star spirit barber, her cuts were precise, flawless. A cool breeze swept through. The flayed Cyclops clamped its legs together instinctively and fled in a red-faced sprint, disappearing into the forest's depths. Virgo and Sagittarius exchanged relieved smiles and dissolved into starlight, returning to the star spirit world. "I did it!" Lucy cried, stunned for a few seconds, and then running up to Chess like a schoolgirl who'd just aced a test. "Chess, Black Magician Girl, did you see? I did it!" "That was brilliant," the Black Magician Girl said, giving her a thumbs up. Chess shifted and spoke, facing the tree to the side. "Remember this feeling. Once you take the first step, the path of training becomes easier." "Yes," Lucy whooped and waved, still buzzing. Chess didn't turn around. He simply raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Snap. The unicorn's horns effect was dispelled. The tiny horn on Lucy's forehead vanished like foam. Before she could react, a bone-deep exhaustion swept through her, an awful lack of magical power, and the Cancer star dress burst with a sharp, painful pop. Ah, huh? Chapter 185, A Village Giving Off a Strange Vibe. Maintaining the Golden Key star dress drained far more magic power than Lucy had expected, and she'd already opened several constellation gates that day. When Chess disengaged the unicorn's horn, her star dress connection snapped instantly. Even worse, in the chaos she'd lost her original clothes. If Happy had been there, he'd have kicked her while she was down and muttered, "Typical Lucy." Black Magician Girl, ever practical, suggested switching to the dog constellation star dress. It had much lower requirements. That was the only thing that saved Lucy from a very embarrassing moment. Considering the client was still some distance away, Chess fed Lucy a stamina enhancer Super Z to top up her drained magic power, letting her keep training at high intensity to stabilize the unstable star dress. From that point of view, Boundary Forest, full of fierce magical beasts, was the perfect training ground. Fighting her way through the forest, Lucy's control over the star dress went from a 20% success rate at the start to 50%. Terrifying growth, but not surprising. Lucy's celestial spirit magic talent was already exceptional. In the original timeline, she had self-taught the star dress in a year, despite working at a newspaper. Now she had the Black Magician training program, guidance from Chess and Black Magician Girl, and an extreme environment filled with powerful magical beasts. Rapid progress was inevitable. Of course, the semi-hellish training had its downsides. By the time the outline of the ancient village came into view through the trees, Lucy was exhausted, body aching, legs weak. The stamina enhancer Super Z replenished magic power, but not injuries or worn-down will. She could feel how thin her endurance had become. "Master, is that the village marked on the request?" Black Magician Girl perched on a treetop, one hand to her forehead in a cute surveying pose. The setting sun spread orange light over the endless forest. It was already twilight. According to the map, yes, there aren't any other villages nearby. Chess rolled up the parchment and put it away. "We've finally arrived." Lucy sagged with a heavy sigh, panting, tongue hanging out. In the pure white little dog star dress, she looked exhausted enough to be called tired as a dog. Even with advanced magic and repeated magic power recoveries, she could barely face the client. The ambitious newcomer who wanted to be an S-class mage was getting a very real taste of how difficult SS requests were. Just as they were about to approach the village, the underbrush ahead exploded into motion, and a black shape shot out at blinding speed. Chess's eyes sharpened, and he clenched his right fist automatically, then relaxed as recognition washed over him. He suppressed the dark golden magic power stirring at his command and eased his hand. "Huh? Little dog?" A man in purple shoulder pads staggered forward, reeking of alcohol, nose twitching as he sniffed Lucy's scent. Where did this perverted little beast come from? Instinct took over. Lucy kicked him so hard, the drunk described a graceful arc through the air and collapsed into the bushes. Only after he hit the ground did she realize the man looked human. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't react in time." The man flailed out of the brush, unsteady on his feet. Maybe it was the kick, maybe the alcohol. "It's fine." He collected himself and frowned. "But you're wearing a little dog outfit, and I don't recognize your scent. You look clumsy and useless. Are you a new recruit from Quattro Cerberus Guild?" Lucy bristled at the presumptuous tone, instantly switching into a ranting mode. "I'm not a dog. I'm wearing a dog outfit. I don't smell weird. And who asked you to judge me? Would a newcomer even choose to adventure in a place like this? And what do you mean, clumsy and useless? Your pickup lines are awful, terrible." Then she froze, a sudden realization dawning. "Wait, you're from Quattro Cerberus?" Quattro Cerberus was that kingdom's recognizable guild. Not as famous as Fairy Tale, but not obscure either. Lucy had looked into many guilds before joining Fairy Tale. She knew their names. The lullaby incident and other encounters had made Quattro Cerberus familiar to her. "That's right, this is an S-class from Quattro Cerberus." Chess walked up slowly, glanced at the man, and said, "Drunken Hawk Pakas." Fiore was a big place. Magicians from different guilds often crossed paths on requests. A while back, Chess had just become S-class when he'd tangled with Pakas. They'd fought to a draw and both dropped. Chess had even snagged a pot of greed card then. "S-class? This drunk?" Lucy gaped, then burst out laughing at the idea of Pacas. I didn't expect you, that card guy, to be here too. Pacas curled a lip in disdain but didn't press to fight. He looked worse for wear. Breath shallow, magic power flickering chaotically. Troops from Quattro Cerberus came up behind him, all covered in dirt and blood, their auras weak. Quattro Cerberus was rough and tumble. Few women joined. Chess put it together at a glance. So you couldn't finish the request either? He asked with a half smile. Pacas didn't try to snap back. He let out a long, weary sigh, eyes haunted by recent memories. Chess, you should turn back. This request, one of his men began. It's not for ordinary magicians, Pacas cut in. You can't complete it. He spoke with grave certainty. But Ches, feeling none of the fear, only excitement, shook his head. According to Pacas and his group, this was more than a normal S-class job, but Ches had hit Saint 10 level long ago. In strength, he was now far beyond Pacas. Lucy's face wasn't as composed. The Quattro Cerberus team disappeared back into the jungle, and she asked tentatively, Ches J, could he really fight you to a draw? Through the Phantom Lord fights, she'd gotten the impression Fairy Tail's S-class were stronger than those of other guilds. He could before. Now I'd knock him out in minutes, Ches said confidently. Lucy brightened, until Ches continued. But without special circumstances, Pacas' raw strength is roughly similar to Urza's. He's the strongest in Quattro Cerberus. Lucy's smile froze. Her pupils widened, and after a stunned beat, she exclaimed, Even Urza wouldn't be able to finish it? That conclusion's not necessarily true. Ches spoke more seriously than usual. Strength matters, but so does judgment, willpower, experience. In will alone, Urza is stronger than Pacas. Black Magician Girl hopped in with a raised finger. And sometimes luck helps more than strength. Lucy let out a rueful, small chuckle. Since joining Fairy Tail and teaming with Natsu, she felt unlucky at times. Otherwise, she'd have enough money to cover rent. Ches clenched his fist, a grin of anticipation spreading across his face. Turning back without trying isn't the Fairy Tail way, he said. And there's another reason we have to finish this. I want to give Quattro Cerberus a good slap in the face. With that, he took the lead down the forest path. Black Magician Girl followed, humming. We did come all this way, she chimed. Lucy took a breath and followed quickly. The client's location on the map turned out to be a small village ringed by moss-covered stone walls several meters high, blending into the forest. A bronze gate, carved with ancient symbols, stood shut and solid. From the narrow gap between the gate's halves came a peculiar aura, not human magic power, and unlike the forest beasts they'd fought. Very strange. Ches crossed to the gate and touched it. A chaotic pulse of magic power surged through him. A cold, oppressive chill crawled across his skin. This village, he murmured, withdrawing his hand with his brow creased. Master, something's off inside, Black Magician Girl said. She'd trained with Ches for so long, she'd gotten slightly more sensitive to subtle magic shifts. Lucy, who had ducked behind Ches at lightning speed, peered cautiously between them. She didn't feel anything on the same level as them, and that only made the whole scene scarier. Hey, who's there? A low shout from the wall startled them. A burly man in an animal hide coat and a large saber glinting at his side looked down at them. He was human, thankfully, not some twisted monster. Lucy let out a silent breath of relief. We're magicians from Fairy Tail, here on a request. Ches stepped forward, producing the form and showing the Fairy Tail emblem on his right arm. Fairy Tail? The guard echoed. The name would once have been a beacon of hope, but after the Quattro Cerberus team's failure, the guard was wary. He vaulted down from the wall and approached to take the form. Once he scanned the information, his tense expression softened. Hello, magicians who have come a long way. I'm Baresti, the village guard. I'm Ches Linadoga, an S-class magician from Fairy Tail. Ches offered his hand. Baresti's pupils narrowed in recognition. Ches? The one who defeated the ancient demon 18 fighting gods on Galuna Island? If that was on the news, then yes. Ches answered calmly, letting the reputation show a little bit. Even in this deep forest, people had contact with the outside world. The village had contacted the Guild Alliance and the Council, and even upgraded their request to SS difficulty. That's a relief. If it's you, you'll be stronger than that drunken Quattro Cerberus idiot, right? Bareste's face brightened. Lucy, standing close enough to hear, felt a fresh wave of pressure and complained inwardly. She didn't want to imagine what Baresta would say about Fairy Tale if even chess could fail. "Pakas, I beat him," Chess said and stepped aside, creating space. With a wide grin, he gave Lucy a gentle push from behind and declared loudly, "And the one leading this mission is Lucy-sama right here." Lucy's eyes flashed with stunned, incomprehensible clarity. "Captain? Lucy-sama? Me?" Night fell as they set up near a cliff above the village. Rows of torches lit the mouth of a deep, naturally formed mountain cavern. Inside, the cave showed signs of being modified by human hands. The center opened into a modest square, ringed by scattered wooden houses and everyday furnishings. Under the guard Bareste's guidance, Chess, Lucy, and the Black Magician Girl stopped at this common area instead of going directly into the village. The temporary residents came out one by one to see the newcomers. At their head was a white-haired old man leaning on a cane. After a brief introduction, Chess learned that the man was the village chief and the client who had posted the SS class request. "Thank you for accepting this request, Mr. Chess of Fairy Tale, and Captain Lucy, who is leading the team," the chief said warmly as he invited them into the main wooden house and offered them a special tea. Lucy, put on the spot as captain, accepted first with a stiff smile. The client was far kinder than she'd pictured, but being singled out as the strongest in the group made her cheeks burn with embarrassed awkwardness. She felt like a fraud. Chess noticed the look of resentment on Lucy's face. Taking the teacup, he smiled and said, "You're welcome. Please tell Lucy-sama the specifics of the request." Lucy's expression shifted. She felt every eye on her and wanted to disappear. "This old man understands," the village chief replied, and his tone grew suddenly grave. Firelight flickered in his cloudy eyes, and Lucy straightened, straining to catch every word. She may have been embarrassed, but she took the job seriously. The chief cleared his hoarse throat and explained the village's situation. Nestled in the Baon-de-Lee forest, the village had existed for nearly 4 centuries. Explorers trapped in the forest had fled into this area because wild magical beasts wouldn't enter it. The reason, the chief said, was an egg-shaped fossil. By touching it, the explorers learned how to make magical beasts bereft of power, letting them survive and settle. That egg, the so-called magic egg, had allowed the village to thrive. The corpses of once powerful magical beasts brought in high rewards, which explained why this apparently poor village could offer an 18 million windfall. They'd lived like that for generations, until 3 years ago. Without warning, villagers who had drawn power from the egg began to demonize. They turned into irrational, bloodthirsty monsters. Lucy's eyes widened. "Wait, that sounds familiar," she said, thinking of the S-class request Natsu had once taken. The demon islanders of Karuna Island, affected by the moondrop, had seemed similar at first. The old chief looked excited at the mention of that case. Barest, standing behind him, trembled slightly with sudden hope. If Lucy knew that situation, maybe they had someone who could help. Lucy, sensing their hope, straightened and tried to muster confidence. "Heh," she said, pushing her chest out a little. "If I'm not mistaken, the moon here turns purple every night, right?" But the chief's face pinched with confusion. "Purple moon? No, the moon here has always looked normal." Chess saw Lucy's confidence collapse. "It's as I thought," he said calmly. "If they can judge ordinary moonlight, their minds and memories aren't fully scrambled." He moved to steady the situation. "That means the information is likely accurate and won't mislead us in the investigation." The chief's expression shifted to relief. The magicians who came before didn't even confirm that. As expected of Fairy Tale, your professionalism is far greater. Bareste added, visibly relieved. Lucy forced a grin, inwardly fuming at herself for the blunder. Black Magician Girl snorted and prodded her teasingly. "So, Lucy-sama, what do we do next?" Under the chief's direction, they learned more. Bareste, the village guardian, lifted his beast-skin coat, and Lucy's breath hitched. He was heavily muscled, but parts of his skin, on his chest and abdomen, were covered in mottled, dark purple scales. The look was uncanny, too close to the demons from Karuna Island. Although Chess had just ruled out the purple moon, the visual similarity suggested a possible connection. Chess studied the strange skin quietly. In their world, demons tended to fall into 2 categories: purebred demons, like those native to the magic world and the Karuna Islanders, and the created demons called Aetherius from Zaref's books. Baresta's features were closer to a purebred demon's. The connection to Karuna might be real. When Chess asked for the exact request, the chief answered simply, "Investigate the cause of the magic egg's abnormality and resolve it so the village could return to normal." "First, we must see the egg," the black magician girl said thoughtfully. Barest frowned and issued an urgent warning. The magic of magicians who had gone into the village to investigate before had inexplicably weakened the closer they got to the egg. In short, a magic dampening effect intensified near the egg. Moreover, completely demonized villagers roamed the village with horrifying aggression. They would not leave on their own and attacked any human who entered. They were more savage than the forest's magical beasts. The party must be extremely careful and, if possible, avoid killing them. That was how Pakaz's team had failed. Under the egg's weakening influence, they couldn't reach the site without harming the demonized villagers. From Baresta's description, the weakening seemed strong enough to overwhelm even S-class mages from ordinary guilds. Lucy shivered, imagining blood-red eyes and frenzied attacks. Ches, who had seen many crises, remained composed and eager to investigate. Since it was late, he decided to rest and head out in the morning. Just as he asked about a room, hurried footsteps came from the doorway. A girl entered, a red outfit trimmed in yellow that looked half-tribal, a stone pendant broken into two halves at her throat, short brown hair, and slightly melancholic eyes. Chess's gaze sharpened. "You're back, Eclair," the village chief said. Eclair, the phoenix priestess from the old legend, who gained extended life after drinking phoenix blood and had lived alone for over 400 years, stood before them. Chess had expected to find her somewhere in Baondali Forest, but he hadn't expected her to appear now, especially not like this. Eclair did not immediately respond. She looked the three over with visible distaste. When her eyes met Lucy's, her expression flickered but closed almost at once. "Village chief, why haven't you stopped that request?" she asked without looking at the newcomers, then turned to the chief and Barest. "Those people before proved they couldn't solve this." The chief tried to interject. "Mr. Buff, Chess and Lucy-sama are stronger than the magicians who came before." Eclair cut him off. "Magician's power only brings misfortune. Haven't you noticed that the egg's influence has accelerated since magicians appeared? We were forced to evacuate the village." Barest sighed. "But Eclair, we can't handle this alone. If it were simple, they would never have appealed to the council for an SS-class request." "I will find a solution in my own way," Eclair said, and without another word, she turned and left, not glancing back. Chapter 187, Mysterious Man Exploring the Village. "What a strange fellow," Lucy muttered, watching Eclair's retreating figure. A soft, apologetic voice followed. A fluffy yellow bird doll flapped its wings and hopped onto the table, its round eyes surprisingly expressive. "You can talk," Lucy gasped. "Hello, everyone. My name is Meng Meng, and I'm Eclair's partner." The little bird bowed a claw in greeting. "Hi, I'm Lucy." Lucy forced a smile. She had Happy in her own guild, that sharp-tongued blue exceed, and Bixlow's repeating dolls to remind her that talking plushes weren't impossible. After greeting Meng Meng, Chess looked up at the old village chief across from him. "Is that girl Eclair from your village?" he asked. "She didn't grow up here, but we consider her one of our own," the old chief said, eyes clouded with memory. "We found her unconscious outside the village about 4 years ago. She'd taken a bad blow and lost much of her memory. She couldn't even remember why she'd come into Baondali Forest. Her mind has been fragile ever since." This village had been founded by adventurers who'd become lost in the forest. The residents kept a tradition of taking in travelers willing to settle. One of the reasons the settlement had survived, new people arrived from time to time. Because Eclair had appeared around the time the village first experienced strange phenomena, the chief and the others had never suspected anything. Chess, however, who knew more about the magic egg and the phoenix stone, listened closely. After hearing the chief's story, his eyes narrowed. He was more convinced than ever that the magic egg might be connected to Eclair. "So that's how it is," Lucy whispered, her expression clouding. Suddenly, Eclair seemed more pitiable. Lucy couldn't imagine waking one day and forgetting Natsu, her guildmates, or even her father, Jude. Please be patient with her, the old chief said apologetically. She's kind-hearted. More than anyone, she wants the village to be made whole again. Don't worry about it. The black magician girl waved a hand breezily. Chess hadn't mentioned Eclair or the Phoenix Stone to her before, but she'd always been like this, blunt and unconcerned with niceties. So, Lucy, shall we check the village now, or rest here for the night and leave tomorrow? Chess asked with a smile. Lucy bristled at that formal address for a moment, then understood his meaning and nodded. Let's rest first. I've been traveling all day, and I'm tired. We have rooms set aside for magicians who come to take requests, the chief said. They're simple, but you're welcome to use one. That'll be fine, Lucy said gratefully. They shifted to a small wooden house the villagers had prepared. Lucy's face fell when she saw the single wooden bed inside. Sweat and the smell of alcohol clung to the room. She wanted to complain about basic hygiene when the village could afford an 18 million reward, but then realized the Quattro Cerberus team had just left. There hadn't been time to clean up. Didn't you say it's fine to just have a place to stay? Chess stretched and yawned, wandering toward the wooden bed. Lucy, you can take the floor. I'll take the bed. Wait, don't you believe in ladies first? Lucy hurried over to stop him. The dusty floor didn't seem so bad anymore. Do I look like a gentleman who cares about that? Chess asked, smiling. Not at all, Lucy blurted. She quickly grabbed another excuse. I'm your little sister, right? Of course you should give the bed to your younger sister. Chess sighed, clearly unable to refuse. It was all he needed to hear. Lucy beamed. Chess is the best. Then a circle of light flared in the room. Chess shifted to the empty space and flicked his wrists. Card magic conjured a finely made single bed. He had kept a stash of everyday items in his cards after years on the road. Blankets, food, a mattress that smelled fresh, even through the barrier. The clean sheets and a comfortable pillow made Lucy nearly squeal with delight. She wondered why he hadn't brought it out earlier and cursed him under her breath, but rushed over to tug his sleeve anyway. What's the matter? Weren't you going to choose the wooden bed? Chess teased, enjoying the shade of embarrassment on her face. He wouldn't really make Lucy sleep on the hard, dirty bed. He led her into the bed space created in his card magic. He could afford to sleep there too, but he worried that if the village chief came by the next morning and found them gone, it might scare the old man. So after a quick wash, Chess passed through the barrier and lay on the comfortable single bed. He didn't sleep right away. Instead, he mulled over the village's information, the details about Eclair, and possible plans for exploring the village the next day. Meanwhile, at the entrance to Boundali Forest, beneath the cold, clear moon, the Quattro Cerberus squad, fresh from a failed request, ran into a middle-aged man in heavy armor. Excuse me, the path's narrow. Could you step aside? The man said slowly, his voice low and icy. What? Why should we move? Roka snapped back, her pigtails like pincers. The team was already on edge from the SS-rank job. They weren't about to be polite to a stranger. The armored man's mouth tilted into a cruel smile, and he raised his palm. The Quattro Cerberus magicians took battle stances, ready. Move out of the way. Pakas, the squad leader, suddenly barked, and then, unexpectedly, he stepped aside himself. Paka-sama, the others protested. Less talk. Do it. Pakas's command was final. He'd moved first, even though no one understood why. His forehead was sweaty, his hands trembling slightly. The others reluctantly flanked the path and let the armored man pass. Heh, good judgment, the man said with a short chuckle as he walked past. His cloak billowed. He glanced at Pakas before lowering the hand he'd raised. He didn't hurry, just casually strode into the dark forest and vanished. Only after the stranger disappeared did Pakas's tension ease and he let out a long breath. Why did we let that guy pass? The magicians clustered, bewildered and shaken. His aura wasn't human. Pakas's voice was hollow. If we'd fought him, we probably would have died. Since when has the continent had someone like that? One of them whispered. They all went quiet. For the first time, Pakas, who was never one to be intimidated, used the word monster. They hoped the stranger wasn't headed for the SS request. Pakas stared toward the village at the forest's edge, remembering the chill that had spread through his body when their eyes had met. If he goes after Chess and the others, they'll be in deep trouble. The next morning, unaware of the armored man, Chess greeted the old village chief, the guard Berest, and the villagers. He left the cave with Lucy and the black magician girl and headed to the village to investigate. At the heavy, cold gate, they found Eclair and Meng Meng standing dazedly. "Good morning, Eclair." "Morning, Meng Meng," Lucy called brightly. Having learned Eclair's story, Lucy genuinely wanted to be friendly. Wearing a pink robe identical to the black magician girl's, because she hadn't found her proper clothing and the star dress was too conspicuous, Lucy and the black magician girl looked oddly like twin blondes from behind. Hearing them, Eclair turned, saw last night's magicians, and walked away coldly. Lucy's smile flickered. As expected, Eclair was prickly. "Eclair, Lucy and the others are guests of the village," Meng Meng said, bowing apologetically toward Lucy and then hurrying after Eclair, chiding her gently. "Should we follow them?" Lucy asked hesitantly. From Berest, she'd learned that Eclair went into the forest every day looking into the magic egg's abnormalities and always returned wounded. Lucy didn't like her attitude but didn't want to leave her alone. "She's been doing this for years. Don't worry," Chess said. "Completing the request will be the best help for her." Trusting Chess, Lucy took a deep breath and followed as he pushed the gate open. A chill rushed out at them. A thick black mist lay beyond the gate, swallowing light and leaving only vague silhouettes of houses within a few meters. Beyond that, it was pitch black, as if something terrible prowled in its depths. Hoarse, low roars echoed from within the fog. "It's really scary, this village," Lucy whispered, hugging herself and hiding behind Chess. "You don't need to be so frightened. That sound is probably from villagers transformed into demons," the black magician girl said with a casual smile, trying to calm her. Lucy's imagination ran wild at the image of beaked, clawed monsters. "That only makes it worse. Let's go," Chess said quietly. He walked through the gate and proceeded down the village's main road, the black magician girl close behind. Lucy hurried after them, and as they moved deeper, they discovered the village wasn't as primitive as they'd feared. The streets were paved with tidy stone, and the houses, brick and wood, were sturdy and well-built. It wasn't Magnolia, but the place had once been prosperous and stable. With time, it might have grown into a proper town. Unfortunately, now it was a dead, silent village. Chapter 188, Barrier Particles? Invisible Suction. According to the old village chief, the magic egg lay beneath the altar at the center of the village. To get there, Chess and the others had to push through the black mist that filled the streets, feel their way along the winding lanes, enter an underground stone gate from the activity square, and follow a passage that led to the altar. On paper, it sounded straightforward, essentially just a matter of moving forward blindly. Yet even Pacas of Quattro Cerberus, who gave it his all, could only make it halfway through the passage before abandoning the request without even finding the egg. Shortly after entering the village, Chess understood why Pacas had failed. The black mist wasn't natural. It carried traces of magic power that, when inhaled, invaded the body and threw a person's magic out of control. The sensation was eerily like the barrier particles described in Zeref's book after demons self-destructed. Chess hadn't directly fought Tartaros, but the resemblance was unmistakable. The villagers' demonization was clearly linked to the magic egg. If Zeref's creations borrowed from local demons, it made sense they would have similar properties. "Master, this black mist feels wrong," Black Magician Girl said, frowning. Even she, who used black magic, could sense the interference of these barrier-like particles. Lucy blinked, suddenly remembering how hard it had been to breathe since they arrived. She'd been concentrating on the wandering demons and had dismissed the discomfort as nerves. "Let's try something," Chess said, stopping on the path. He wove light at his fingertips and formed a card. "Magic card Cyclone, activate!" A black tornado laced with crackling lightning shot forward, its gravity ripping the mist into the storm's eye and flinging it out of the village. The way ahead cleared at once. The central square was suddenly visible. Lucy felt her breathing ease and the tightness in her chest vanish. She stared at the row of houses flattened by the cyclone. "Chess, you're amazing, though maybe a little too amazing," she muttered. She had a sinking feeling the reward for the request wouldn't match the damage done. Chess just scratched his head and smiled. He'd held himself back, If he'd unleashed the cyclone at full power, the village would have been obliterated. He had also held back for the villagers wandering around. He didn't want to hurt them unnecessarily. No sooner had he finished speaking than low, hoarse roars echoed from the alleys. Pairs of crimson eyes glowered from side streets as monsters with twisted faces, black-purple skin, horns, claws, and fangs emerged. Clearing the mist had improved visibility, and it had drawn the demonized villagers in. "They're here." "The demonized villagers," Lucy said, surprised and a little wary. Up close, their postures and expressions were nearly identical to the demons from Kuriboh Island. Aside from the crimson eyes, some still had hints of human features. Others had fully transformed, sprouting pitch-black bat wings. She stepped forward to speak, trying to appeal to whatever humanity remained in them. Hello there." But the creatures didn't respond. Instead, they lunged with claws bared. Thanks to yesterday's forest training, Lucy ducked with a practiced move and narrowly avoided an attack. "They don't understand human language," Chess observed, eyes narrowing. He watched the gathering horde. "I've cleared the mist for you, Lucy. I'll leave these ones to you." "Hey, wait!" Lucy cried, stunned. The demons hesitated only a moment before charging. She had no choice but to open a gate. "Open! Gate of Virgo," she called. "Princess, punish me!" Virgo replied in her usual dramatic fashion. Lucy ignored the theatrics and ordered, "Virgo, disable them, but don't hurt them. They're villagers." "Understood." Virgo drove herself into the ground, her white-stockinged legs drilling vertical holes into the earth. Thump, thump, holes swallowed the charging demons, trapping many of them. The captives clawed and howled, but couldn't find a way back up. Virgo was perfect for subduing them without causing lasting harm, something violent spirits like Taurus or Aquarius would have struggled with. Just as Lucy relaxed, a portion of the winged demons burst free from the pits. Dazzling gold light streaked across the sky, scattering the flying attackers. The light resolved into a figure in a sharp suit and a lion's maned haircut. "Loki!" Lucy exclaimed, half amused at his timing. "Nice outfit. Did you dress up for our date?" "Don't flatter yourself. Who'd go on a date with you?" Loki snapped back, smiling. Chess and Black Magician Girl walked over. "Long time no see," Chess greeted. "You stole my thunder," Loki chuckled. "But I won't complain." "You were supposed to be doing the heavy lifting anyway," Chess said. "Besides, this is really Lucy's show." Lucy blinked at Chess. "Is it okay to admit that out loud?" "Of course," he said quietly. "I always believed Lucy could do it." Chess's steady confidence moved her. She closed Virgo's gate, freeing the magic power to assume the Taurus star dress. Strength surged through her. She cracked her whip and charged to the front. In Taurus form, Lucy's blows were devastating. Her whip sent gusts of wind that knocked back demons and even lashed passing demon dogs into yelps. Loki followed, supporting her with light magic. "I just threw her into a dangerous environment," Chess shrugged. "Credit goes to Black Magician Girl for the training." "I've watched her practice," Loki said seriously. "She's worked hard." They spoke while Lucy fought her way to the central square. There, an open platform carved with ancient runes sat before a stone gate that descended into darkness. A cold aura seeped from the black mouth of the passage. "That gate feels off," Loki said, eyes narrowing. "No wonder this is an SS-ranked request." Chess had already suspected as much. The barrier particle mist had been a diversion. He had felt, even while dispersing it, an invisible suction trying to draw magic from his body. At first it was faint, but the closer they moved to the altar, the stronger it became. The mist was only a cover for something deeper, something that greedily drained magic power. "Lucy doesn't seem to have noticed," Black Magician Girl said, watching Lucy fight a gate-guarding demon. She added, "I'm sorry, but you'll have to take a good nap." Lucy prepared to throw a demon away with the momentum of a swung whip, a tactic that had worked repeatedly. This time, though, the demon resisted. With a roar, it overpowered her momentum, grabbed her whip, and dragged her in. The force sent her flying. Chess intervened in a flash, punching the demon so hard it collapsed, foaming, and passed out. It wasn't Loki who struck. Lucy's magic power had suddenly become unstable and could no longer sustain him in the human world, forcing him back to the star spirit world. Lucy stumbled, and Chess caught her. The Taurus star dress broke apart into drifting points of light. Alarmed, Lucy realized her magic power was being depleted at an abnormal rate. Yesterday's training had shown that neither opening a gate nor using a star dress should fade that fast. Ches wrapped his cloak around her, lowered her gently to the ground, and sighed. The situation's more complicated than we thought. We should stop exploring and leave for now. If his guess was right, advancing toward the altar would only drain more magic power. They didn't know what lay down there, and charging in would be like handing their power to whatever was lurking inside. Even though they'd come this far, Ches chose prudence over recklessness. Lucy clutched the cloak, shaken and confused but trusting Ches's judgment. Together, the three of them retraced their steps and left the village behind. Chapter 189, The Phoenix and the Devil King, Ancient Monsters. Outside the village, nearly everyone had gathered, about 100 people, all except Eclair and Meng, who were out. They stood before the gate, eyes bright with expectation and worry. Behind that gate lay their homes, the daily comforts they depended on, and most of all, the family and friends they loved. This book is first published on the entire network. Thanks to the old village chief's introduction, they already knew the team handling the request were famous mages from the most renowned guild in the Fior Kingdom. Their hopes were pinned on these visitors. If even Lucy couldn't resolve it, they would have to seriously consider leaving the only homeland they had. The heavy gate sighed as it opened. Ches, Lucy, and the black magician girl stepped out and faced the assembly. The old village chief hurried forward, his voice trembling. He had seen the strange tornado and the black mist that filled the village, and only now had watched it begin to disperse. His relief was palpable. Lucy, as the de facto captain, took the brunt of everyone's stares. She caught the hope on their faces, and for a moment she felt the weight of it. She shook her head with a small, apologetic smile. "Sorry, it may take a little longer," she said. Ches stood a little apart, expression unreadable. Lucy inwardly wished they'd stop calling her Lucy-sama, the honorific sounding awkward coming from so many frightened people. The old village chief and the villagers, less composed than Lucy, looked downcast. "So Lucy-sama, what do we do next?" the chief asked. Ches frowned, deep in thought. The magic egg's abnormality seemed tied to a power-absorbing effect centered below the village. Entering the underground passage directly would be dangerous. Anyone who went in risked having their magic drained, and worse, falling into an unknown trap. Lucy's eyes darted about. "The egg seems to absorb magic. The closer you get, the stronger the effect," she said. Ches did not answer at once. He needed a way to investigate with minimal cost in mana. Suddenly, Lucy's face brightened. She'd had the same idea Ches had been hinting at. She fished a silver key from her keychain and called out, "Open! Gate of the Little Dog Constellation, Plu!" A soft magic circle flared and Plu, small, white, and adorably wobbling, appeared. He raised a tiny paw and gave the villagers a cheerful greeting. "Poo, poo." The crowd fell silent. They'd expected a dazzling spell. Instead, a little white dog appeared. Some of the more practical villagers exchanged bemused looks, thinking Meng could kick it away. Ches, however, smiled faintly. That was exactly what he wanted Lucy to do. The situation demanded reconnaissance, not brute force. Sending a weak star spirit ahead would gather intel without wasting a lot of magic or exposing humans to unnecessary danger. Ches knew Lucy needed to learn to judge and be cautious, not just rely on overwhelming power. This was the sort of lesson an excellent magician should master. Plu, given the mission, squared his tiny shoulders and stepped forward as bravely as he could. To keep the little dog company, Ches summoned Kuriboh. The two cute creatures, one shuffling slowly, the other bouncing nervously, made an unlikely pair as they marched toward the stone altar in the village center. The village had been mostly cleared of demonized villagers by Lucy's earlier work, so Plu and Kuriboh faced little resistance. At the central square, the two exchanged encouraging sounds, "Kuri Kuri" and "Poo Poo Poo," and slipped into the stone gate that led down to the underground passage. Through his magical link, Ches shared Kuriboh's point of view. They descended narrow, damp stairs, past a flickering corridor, and then the space opened up. It was like an inverted bowl, its walls built of pale yellow stone bricks etched with ancient runes now faded by time. In the center stood a moss-covered square altar, a black and purple egg hovering above it. Where the old chief had described a gray-white fossil lay a living thing bristling to break free. A crimson ring of energy surrounded the altar, both a protective barrier and the only light in that cavernous chamber. Chess studied the scene carefully. The runes and the overall architecture gave him a flash of recognition. This place was startlingly like the moon ruins on Karuna Island, where Lion and others once activated the moon drop. The similarities were too precise to be coincidence. If the demonized villagers on Karuna were connected to this altar, the connection could be the key to the strange magic egg and the SS-ranked request. Kuriboh hugged Plu with its tiny paws, and Plu understood what was needed. He aimed his cone-shaped nose at the energy ring. "Kuri! Kuri!" Kuriboh shouted in their language. "Poo, poo, poo," Plu answered. They launched a joint attack, diving at the energy circle with desperate courage. The two collided with a roar and dissolved into points of light, but their assault did not disturb the barrier. Chess's shared vision snapped shut, and he was back outside the gate, smiling ruefully. He admired his little card monster partners for their courage, even though they could not penetrate the shield. Lucy pressed forward, anxious. "Chess, what did you see? What's inside?" she asked. She hadn't been able to see through the magic link Chess had, and the little gate to Plu's realm had just closed. Chess described the altar exactly as he'd seen it: the black and purple egg, the crimson energy ring, the runes, the similarity to Karuna Island. The villagers reacted in panic. Faces lost color, children clutched at grown legs, and whispers spread. Lucy caught one more critical detail. "Chess, you said the altar's design is the same as the moon ruins on Karuna Island?" "That's right," Chess confirmed. "We can get clues from Karuna Island." They didn't have to go there in person. Chess produced a plain-looking card and took out a magic crystal ball. "I have Altir's contact," he said. Altir had stayed on Karuna Island for a long time, both out of a fascination with the moondrop and because she'd been there during the Lion Deliora incident. As a member of the council, she'd been exposed to more arcane knowledge, and she'd once given Chess her contact information back at Paradise Tower. He'd never thought it would be useful so quickly. The magic crystal worked like a landline. Chess poured a little mana into it and dialed. A snowy screen flickered, then cleared into an image. On the other end, mist swirled, and Altir lounged in a bathtub, foam strategically placed. She held the crystal up with one hand, surprised but composed. "Chess, I didn't expect you to contact me," she said. Lucy blushed at the casual scene, but kept her composure. Chess cut to the chase, explaining the egg, the energy ring, the runes, and the uncanny resemblance to the Karuna ruins. Altir listened, brow furrowing. "I didn't think that village's egg would have such a history," she said slowly after a moment. "If the legends are true," Lucy leaned forward. "So you know why the egg is acting up?" Altir related what she'd heard. 500 years ago, a great beast called the Phoenix had ravaged the world. Its counterpart was the Devil King, a terrifying creature that could absorb power and demonize others. The two fought for a century over territory and supremacy. In the end, the Devil King, whose power included draining and demonizing living things, was defeated and annihilated by the Phoenix. The Phoenix itself was gravely wounded in the battle and was then sealed inside a Phoenix stone by the Fire Tribe, who were skilled in sealing magic. The council still kept, registered by the mage Grandini, Eclair's father, an item that could completely destroy an immortal Phoenix, the so-called evil-breaking arrow. Over the centuries, as both Phoenix and Devil King vanished from living memory, the council came to regard the whole story as legend. But the similarities between Karuna Island's demonization and the villagers here suggested a link. The demonized people on Karuna were likely descendants of humans turned into demons by the Devil King 500 years ago. That would explain why the moondrop had left them with confused memories, specifically saying, "We are human." "If I'm right," Altir continued, "that egg is probably the Devil King. It somehow survived and is showing signs of recovery." She straightened then, suddenly very serious. "This is bad. I have to inform the council elders right away." Chess nodded, and Altir, hastily dressing, ended the call. "Devil King," Lucy whispered, stunned. She regretted ever thinking the job would be simple, and she felt the terrified sympathy of the villagers around her. The old village chief stepped forward, voice trembling, eyes cloudy with old memories and new fear. "Eclair told me long ago that the half-stone she wears around her neck is a phoenix stone, he said slowly. Perhaps the Devil King sensed the phoenix's aura. That's why it became unstable. Chapter 190. Target. Smash the magic egg. When the old village chief spoke his suspicion, the whole village fell silent. Even guard Uncle Berest stood frozen, fists unconsciously clenched by his sides. None of them had expected that the shadow that had haunted them for 3 or 4 years would ultimately be connected to Eclair, the very person they had been trying to help. The truth hit like a blow. It was too cruel for her, and for them. So it was Eclair's arrival that put the whole village in danger. Lucy's beautiful eyes narrowed. She covered her mouth in disbelief. How could this happen? Thump. Her words were cut off by the sound of something hitting the ground from the depths of the forest. The injured Eclair stood there, frozen, terror written across her face. Blood dripped from her wounded arm. Meng Meng hovered nearby, trembling, forcing a small, pleading smile. Hey, Lucy, village chief, this is a joke, right? She begged. How could Eclair? She can't be the cause of all this, can she? No one answered. The villagers bowed their heads and kept silent, unsure how to respond or what to do with Eclair. Even though she was now accused of being the cause of their suffering, of turning loved ones and friends into demons and plunging them into fear, Eclair's years of sacrifice for the village could not be erased. She had risked her life fighting magic beasts in the forest more than anyone, and clung to hope that her village might one day be restored. Eclair read the villagers' silent acknowledgement in their faces. Hope evaporated from her, and her defenses began to crumble. Everything everyone suffered, all the misfortunes. She sank to the ground and stared at her blood-stained hands, are because of me. Although the blood came from wounds inflicted by forest beasts, in her eyes it looked like the villagers' accusation, a silent wail. Names surfaced in her memory with painful clarity. The image of the ancient tribe consumed by flames, the dying words of the fire tribe's chief, the frantic need to find magician Calland, it all surged back, fragment by fragment. She remembered now. She hadn't drifted into the Boundalive forest by accident. She'd been searching for magician Calland. The overlapping rush of memories from past and present tore at her nerves. Her body trembled, and 2 lines of tears streaked down her grimy face. It's my fault, she choked. I harmed everyone in the village. Just as the darkness of despair threatened to swallow her, something soft landed in her arms. Through tear-blurred vision, she saw a flash of golden hair. That's not true. Lucy wrapped her arms around the kneeling Eclair. Eclair didn't know. She didn't mean for this to happen, and she's been fighting for the village's future. The sudden embrace startled Eclair. She could feel the warmth against her, and for a moment the logic of an outsider's comfort collided with her shame. She tried to push Lucy away, voice raw. You magicians with your great power can't possibly understand how I feel. How could you? Eclair had always been suspicious of magicians, convinced their power brought misfortune. Now she had become the supposed source of that misfortune. Her guilt and despair pressed on her like a weight. Lucy tightened her hold, steadying Eclair. I understand. I do. She bowed her head and let her golden hair fall across Eclair's shoulder, hiding eyes that were sad but resolute. Because of who I was, I made the people I wanted to protect endure war. The guild that held so many memories for us was destroyed because of me. I know what that pain feels like. She remembered Phantom Lord forcing the magic giant back to the guild hall and how her partners had given their lives to protect her. Eclair's despair mirrored Lucy's own past, the urge to die and atone with her life. But Lucy knew that such thinking only multiplied sorrow. That's why she stepped forward. Some mistakes shouldn't be borne alone, Lucy said, finally loosening her grip a little and looking into Eclair's tear-filled eyes. Blaming yourself completely only brings more regret and sorrow to those around you. Eclair froze. She saw, following Lucy's gaze, the old chief and the other villagers watching her with worry. The hand that had been pressed hard on Lucy's shoulder slid down, powerless. From the moment she first saw Lucy, Eclair had sensed the blonde magician was different, a gentleness in her eyes that understood sorrow. She had never disliked Lucy as she did other magicians. There had even been a small fondness she kept hidden. Lucy, tell me what to do. Eclair's voice trembled, finally admitting her helplessness. If there's nowhere else to turn, Let me be your partner. Let me help. Lucy's face brightened. This was exactly what she had wanted to hear, a chance to be the kind of partner she had once needed. She smiled, blushing at her own awkwardness. Well, it sounds a little boastful. I'm still new, and I need Chess's help. But yes, that's what requests are for. Chess stepped forward slowly, sensing Eclair's emotions had steadied. You don't need to shoulder it all, he said. The Phoenix Stone was only a trigger. Even without its aura, the Devil King would eventually have awakened. He explained, voice even, eyes hard. Based on the information Altair had provided about the Devil King's powers, the villagers' supposed ability to weaken forest magic beasts was actually an absorption. The egg-shaped fossil was siphoning magic to revive something inside. It had allowed villagers to survive in the dangerous woods while the Devil King grew in secret. The arrival of Eclair, who carried Phoenix blood, disturbed that secrecy. Her aura, the nemesis of the Devil King, exposed the hidden threat prematurely. That exposure was what caused the anomaly. So the next step is simple, Chess said, clenching his fists with a flash of resolve. Go down to the underground altar and smash the magic egg. The signs that the Devil King was nearing full awakening were clear. Keeping Eclair away from the village now would change nothing. Lucy raised a hand. Wait, didn't Altair tell us not to act rashly? If the council intervenes, we won't get the request reward. Chess needed no more convincing. 18 million, he said flatly. Lucy's eyes lit up. The black magician girl leaned in and teased Chess. What reward? You just want to fight, don't you? Chess smiled but stayed silent. Eclair stood, determination in her aching body. May I come with you? This started because of me, and I have to face it. One by one, the old village chief and the villagers approached. Despite the conspiracy that had been brewing for years, the magic egg had kept the village safe for almost 400 years, a fact none of them could forget. For their ancestors, for the villagers and kin who had been turned, and for the future of the village, they wanted to be there and see this through. Chess's expression grew serious. I can't guarantee the Devil King's aura won't affect you. Some of you could become demons, like the others. Magicians with enough power and speed could probably avoid being demonized, maybe only suffering a magic deficiency. But for ordinary villagers, the risk was real and unpredictable. Even so, the old chief's jaw did not falter. We are not afraid. Chess nodded once and led the group back through the village gate and into the passage. Lucy, the black magician girl, Eclair, and Meng Meng walked beside him, followed by the villagers. The route was clear, and they soon reached the central square. From there, they descended into the dark, damp underground passage toward the altar. Chess went first, clearing the way. A broad, dark golden magic barrier spread around them. It could not stop the egg's invisible suction completely, but it helped reduce the drain. At last, they reached the cavernous chamber that housed the altar. Suspended above it was the magic egg, wrapped in a crimson halo of energy. I haven't seen it in years. I didn't expect it to look so terrifying, the old chief said, shocked. He remembered the egg as a dull fossil when the village first went dark. No halo, no ominous pulse. Eclair and the others could not have imagined the sight that greeted them now. Eclair, can I borrow your Phoenix Stone? Chess asked. To stop the Devil King, they had to shatter the outer energy halo first. From Kuriboh and Plu's previous attempts, sacrificial attacks that had weakened rules around the artifact, it seemed the halo contained a rule-like power, similar to Freed's spells. It was hard to break by force without risking the chamber itself. Chess wanted to try using the Phoenix Stone, which carried the aura of the Devil King's nemesis, to make the destruction more controlled. If that failed, he would resort to brute force. As a former Magic Weekly Destruction King, doing something drastic posed no moral dilemma for him. Eclair did not hesitate. She untied the half of the Phoenix Stone that hung on a cord around her neck and handed it over. Chess didn't rush. He weighed it in his palm, thinking of what it had been made to contain, something strong enough to seal a phoenix. The material was extraordinary and extremely hard, so hard that even Natsu 7 years from then wouldn't have been able to shatter it with a full-power dragon's fist. With a rueful sigh, Chess's face hardened. A slow, rotating golden magic circle lit on his right arm. Chains clattered as the sealed one's right arm manifested, gathering power. Then, Crimson light burst forth. The Sky Dragon God Slayer magic flared, amplifying his strength. All right, here goes. Chess slammed his foot into the ground and hurled the Phoenix Stone with everything he had. It cut a crimson streak through the air and struck the halo. Crackle. The halo rippled violently under the blow. For a breath it held, then snapped. The energy barrier shattered into scattered points of light. Great! It worked! Lucy and the others cheered. Chess frowned. Something didn't feel right. The Phoenix Stone had broken the halo and fallen to the ground without touching the inner shell of the egg, yet a hairline of cracks appeared along the egg's surface. Before he could figure it out, a deep black light burst out, and a violent, oppressive, ancient aura swept the chamber. From the scattered fragments of the halo, a pair of crimson eyes opened slowly. The terrifying magic creature that had waited for centuries had awakened, and it had awakened early. Chapter 191, Dragon Slayer versus Demon King. A cold, malevolent aura surged like a tide. A black beam of light exploded through the ruined ceiling of the underground chamber and shot upward. The terrifying energy made the entire cavern tremble, rocks cascaded, and dust filled the air. Chess's magic barrier held, sheltering the panicked villagers. When the commotion died down, the old village chief and the others looked up to see a small, black-skinned goblin, pointed mouth, monkey-like cheeks, standing on the broken altar. Scarlet eyes glared down at them. Wait, this tiny thing, about as big as Plu, was the Demon King that was supposed to bring the world to ruin? Lucy, blinking in disbelief, studied the creature that had hatched from the Demon King's egg. It looked so weak. Did the awakening get interrupted or something? She had slipped close behind Chess and now burst forward, fists clenched, itching for a fight. As a fresh guild recruit, Lucy had no hesitation about bullying what looked weak. You brought disaster to our village. Give us back our people. Lady Lucy, step aside. Let us handle this. You monster. Change them back now. I won't stand by and watch Eclair cry anymore, you Demon King. Go to hell. The villagers, rallied by the chief, bristled with newfound courage. Trembling moments before, they were now charging forward with farming tools and brooms. The stooped old chief brandished his broom like a spear, visibly ready to throw his life away. Everyone, don't be rash. Get back. No matter what, that's a demon. Lucy opened her mouth to warn them against being fooled by appearances, but her words died when every villager suddenly slammed on the brakes and backed away, eyes wide. At the front, the chief stared at the creature that had revealed itself truly and whispered to his bodyguard, Bereste, Bereste, promise me you won't run. Don't worry, chief. I won't abandon you, Bereste said, though his voice shook. Time froze for a second. Then in perfect unison, the whole crowd turned and fled. Run! Lady Lucy, save me! Old and young, frail and strong, they bolted straight toward the tunnel entrance. Lucy's jaw dropped. The Demon King ran? The little black goblin, its arrogance evaporating in an instant, scrambled across the rubble and disappeared through the collapsed hole. The villagers, hot-blooded and eager for revenge, took chase without thinking. Suddenly only Chess, Lucy, the black magician girl, Eclair, and Meng Meng remained behind, those who had stayed to dig at the ruins for the Phoenix Stone. They emerged onto the village outskirts just in time to see a violent aura erupt in front of them. From a sky mottled with black mist, a humanoid demon, 12 meters tall, formed. Its maw bristled with fangs, curved horns crowned its head, and 3 pairs of blood-red eyes glittered. Dark purple muscles rolled beneath skin like a rocky hill. The sheer pressure it radiated made the air itself seem to bow. Even the forest's apex beasts paled in comparison. The villagers who had chased the goblins skidded to a stop, frozen with fear. The old chief's face went slack. Bereste, promise me. Don't, he started again. Run! Bereste's reply this time was a shout, and everyone obeyed. Elderly, children had the strongest fighters. Everyone fled as one. Lucy gaped at their perfectly synchronized retreat. I say, your faces are too ugly, aren't they? Who told me not to block the way? A cold gust snapped across her, and she realized with a start that the fleeing villagers had all pushed her forward, placing her at the front to face the demon. Because of Chess's earlier intervention, they assumed Lucy was the strongest among them. The truth, however, was different. Brother Chess, save me! Lucy cried, finally catching on. She made a ridiculous expression, and then, like everyone else a moment earlier, bolted, and dove behind Chess at lightning speed. "Your face isn't much better, Lucy," the black magician girl teased. "This is well beyond training-level opponents." Chess stepped forward. The Demon King's aura was heavy, likely more powerful than Demon Deliora, frozen by Ulu, yet the creature was still incomplete, prematurely hatched. Who knew how strong its final form would be? Chess felt a mix of relief and regret. Relieved, the current form was manageable. Regretful, he wouldn't see what it could become. Dark, golden magic flared around Chess as the Demon King's black mist clashed with him. He raised his right hand and flicked a monster card with a practiced motion. From the vertical magic circle, a swordsman surged forth, leaping into the air with a massive dragon-tooth greatsword. "Ha! Ha! Is it finally my turn?" Dragon Slayer boomed, posing theatrically. Then, in a traitorous second, two heart-shaped eyes seemed to pop from inside his steel helm. "Oh, Miss Lucy, your outfit is amazing!" Lucy froze. This was the third time that day she'd been harassed. First Loki, then Taros, now this. Chess, as the card holder, hid his face in his hand. Dragon Slayer had been chosen because he hadn't had a true fight since Chess acquired him. His power and style were unknown. Unfortunately, the first thing he noticed after appearing wasn't the towering Demon King, it was Lucy. All right, deal with that big guy," Lucy said warily, pointing. "Leave it to me." Dragon Slayer puffed out his chest. Someone whose daily ambition was to decapitate dragons wasn't going to be cowed by size. He charged, humming with bravado. The Demon King noticed Dragon Slayer and spread its massive arms with a roar that shook the sky. As the energy storm bore down, Dragon Slayer went still for an instant, then swung his greatsword in a backhand. Dragon Slayer, Type 1, Wind of Steel. The dragon-tooth greatsword cleaved a hurricane through the air, shredding the houses in its path and punching through the Demon King's energy storm. The giant staggered back, leaving two deep furrows in the earth. A strong gust can ground a dragon and limit its mobility. You may not be a dragon, but it's time to hunt. Dragon Slayer chattered as he charged. But the Demon King was no novice of a century gone. It planted its hulking right leg, tightened a fist like a boulder, and brought it down on Dragon Slayer with a crushing blow. The impact fractured the ground and sent a shockwave that rocked even Chess. If the fight had been in the village center, that single punch would have leveled most of it. "Dragon Slayer should be fine, right?" Lucy wailed as dust and black mist billowed. "He's a 7-star monster with solid attack and defense," Chess said with a thin smile. "He won't fall to a casual punch." A sudden gust cleared the dust. Dragon Slayer sprang up, unbroken, using the Demon King's downward momentum to sprint upward and slash without pause. Each strike sprayed black blood. Each pass opened massive wounds along the demon's arm. It was less like a teenage Cyclops and more like Lucy's ferocious Stardress assaults in spirit, but with far darker consequences. The Demon King's many eyes tracked him, and it countered by swatting with its other massive hand. Dragon Slayer sidestepped, let the sword recoil carry him back, then planted his feet and sized the foe up. "This is tougher than I thought," he admitted, flicking the black blood off his blade. He'd wanted to chop off an arm on that first run. The Demon King, enraged, reared its head and bellowed. From its maw came a vile stench and a gathering of black motes that coalesced into a seething orb. "Oh? It has a breath attack?" Dragon Slayer's pupils narrowed, a feral grin forming. "Then I'll treat you like a true dragon." He braced the greatsword before him, drawing the maximum power he could from Chess. The Demon King lowered its head and unleashed the condensed beam. The black ray tore the air as it raced straight at Dragon Slayer. "Dragon Slayer, Type 2. Dragon Slayer stood his ground, the obsidian beam mirrored in his eyes. At the last instant, he shifted, sliding the greatsword behind him. Breath slash! A crescent of sacred blade light burst forth, cleaving the dark beam into two streams. Two massive explosions thundered down at the southeast and southwest edges of the village, and fierce fires devoured everything in those zones. The villagers under Chess's barrier trembled. Men who fought nothing more dangerous than forest beasts couldn't imagine the devastation a direct hit would have caused. Eclair clenched her hands, face pale. Lucy squeezed her gently. "Don't be scared, Eclair. Brother Chess is amazing," she said, giving a confident smile she didn't quite feel. Eclair forced a smile back. She trusted Lucy and trusted Chess, but she had her own fear gnawing at her. Inside the Phoenix Stone she guarded was another monster, perhaps as powerful as this Demon King, maybe stronger. If the Demon King threat passed, could a being like that stay in the village? Would there even be a place for her in the world? A rough, triumphant shout cut through the worry. Dragon Slayer surged forward against the split beams and with a final roar blasted them apart, scattering energy fragments. The remaining blade light struck the Demon King's face, spraying black blood as the creature shrieked. Dragon Slayer pressed the attack, reversing his grip and flashing into an afterimage. He darted behind the towering fiend and sheathed his sword slowly. When the dust settled, the Demon King's surface was crisscrossed with dense slashes. Flesh didn't spurt as dramatically as one might expect. The severed tissue rapidly petrified and flaked off, falling with a hiss of black mist. "Is it over?" Lucy breathed. Black Magician Girl shook her head with a small smile. "When you say that, it usually means things are far from over." "Huh?" Lucy frowned. Chess pointed into the lingering black mist. A faint silhouette was stirring at the depths, something that hinted at the Demon King's final form. Chapter 192, The Approaching Devil Beast Swarms. Above the black mist, dense arcs of dark purple electricity danced wildly. The ancient magic circle spun slowly, pouring out cold, manic energy. At a certain point, the energy burst outward, whipping up a tornado that tore the black mist apart and shredded nearby trees and houses. Black, tattered wings unfolded, and the Devil King stepped through, over 3 meters tall, his black-purple vertical pupils cold and malevolent. A chill wind swept the area. With his arrival, the temperature dropped noticeably. "So this thing has a third form?" Lucy's face went pale. The raw sense of pressure his size gave off wasn't as overwhelming as the giant monster from before, but when she met those eerie eyes, she shuddered and felt her magic power stir restlessly. "Even so, he's still ugly," the Black Magician Girl sniffed, pouting. "I always imagined the legendary Devil King as some tall, handsome hero." "Have you been reading too many fantasy novels?" Lucy started, but Chess cut in, pointing at the Devil King. "That's the Devil King." He emphasized it like a matter of fact. "As for tall, handsome, and dashing, aren't I right here?" Chess stepped forward with shameless bravado. He showed no surprise that the Devil King had a third form. In fact, he'd suspected it. The Devil King's size and raw destructive power already set him far above ordinary monsters. But according to Ultier's intelligence, the Devil King hadn't yet demonstrated his two special abilities, demonization of living beings and energy absorption. And that black magic circle earlier, Chess's eyes narrowed. He felt a strange déjà vu, very similar to the flare-up when Mira went berserk and unsealed her magic power. Maybe the old joke from Karuna Island might come true. Capture the Devil King and give him to Mira as a present. What would Devil King Mira even look like? Chess's mouth twitched. He couldn't help feeling a little excited at the thought. "Brother Chess, you're not only narcissistic, your smile is terrifying," Lucy said, noticing his expression. She looked at the Devil King with a hint of pity. "I suddenly get the feeling this guy's got terrible luck." Compared to Chess's grim amusement, the Devil King's third form didn't look all that impressive. He raised his eyes and fixed them on the Dragon Slayer. "To be able to force me into revealing my true form, you are not bad." His voice was hoarse and slow, carrying the arrogance of something ancient and superior. There was a sense of immortality to him, like he could not be easily destroyed. But unlike the Phoenix, who could be reborn from fire, the Devil King's rebirth required 5 stages: Stone Egg, Demon Seed, Black Goblin, Demon Shell, and True Form, cycling until the final awakening. The first 4 stages were a charging phase. The more energy accumulated, the more perfect the true form that eventually appeared. That explained why the Black Goblin tried to flee from ordinary villagers. He needed a safe place to hide and keep charging. When escape became impossible, he activated the Demon Shell, a form that was easier to expose. That had been his mistake. He'd been cut apart by the Dragon Slayer before his true form was fully developed, and that unfinished true form was forced to descend. "Dragons used to praise this old man like that," the Dragon Slayer said, resheathing his dragon-tooth greatsword with swagger. Their fate, however, was to become nourishment for this greatsword. He bristled with arrogance and charged. His feet exploded power into the ground, and a gust of wind tore up as he rushed the Devil King. "Ah, just a lowly human," the Devil King snorted. He curled 5 black-fingered hands around a dense, pitch-black sphere of light and hurled it at the Dragon Slayer. The sphere shot forward, the energy leaking from it, tearing up the earth along its path, turning rock to dust. The Dragon Slayer's eyes narrowed. He judged the sphere's power to be extraordinary, but he had no intention of dodging. He accelerated, leapt upward with the dragon-tooth greatsword held high, and shouted, "This trinket, this old man will cut it open in minutes." Zzzt! Holy light ran along his blade as it slammed into the pitch-black sphere. Sparks leapt, and a shockwave ripped outward, shattering everything nearby. After a few seconds of stalemate, the Dragon Slayer's strength won out. He cleaved the sphere into scattered fragments of dark light. At that instant, the Devil King's black wings beat, whipping up a violent wind. A shadow screamed as it dove in. The Devil King spread his weight and stomped down onto the Dragon Slayer's chest, driving his foot through armor into flesh. The crushing force shattered the armor instantly. The Dragon Slayer spat a mouthful of blood and was hurled backward, smashing through the forest hundreds of meters away with a thunderous crash. Trees were snapped like twigs, and startled birds exploded into the sky. "Humans are fragile," the Devil King said, standing where he had landed. He didn't pursue the fallen Dragon Slayer. His cold eyes shifted toward Chess and the others. He was perceptive to dangerous auras. He knew the man standing before the group could threaten him. His gaze lingered also on Eclair and the phoenix stone pendant at her throat. That familiar aura tightened his fists. A flash of ancient hatred and killing intent flickered across his face. He wanted to grind to dust the being bearing the blood of his destined enemy, the Phoenix, to settle a grudge 400 years old. "Oh no, he's looking this way," Lucy squealed and shoved herself in front of Chess. The old village chief and the villagers reacted by hauling themselves another dozen meters back and cowering behind house walls, ready to run. Cowardly as they were, they at least made less trouble for Chess than the idiots who rushed headlong into danger. "Well then, this finally has a little of the difficulty an SS request ought to have," Chess said calmly, meeting the Devil King's gaze. The magic arrays on his forearms began to turn, the seals over his wrists lifting, and magic power surged through him. From that casual kick the Devil King had delivered, it was clear his true form's power outclassed a normal S-rank magician. The Dragon Slayer's strength was geared toward dragons. His panel was limited against non-dragon foes. Chess had dragon allies in his deck, the Cursed Dragon and the City Guard Winged Dragon, but he'd already tested them. Because they were allies rather than opponents' field creatures, they couldn't boost the Dragon Slayer's attack. It was a pity. In this moment, Chess had to step up. Roar, the Devil King opened his maw and unleashed a sound filled with eerie energy. You, dark, materialized halos pulsed outward. The first to feel it were the large birds circling overhead. They beat their wings, then erupted in thick black mist. Their bright feathers turned coal dark and long. Jagged fangs sprouted in their beaks. In an instant, they had become demon birds, radiating evil aura. Then black gas started seeping out from the depths of the forest, and roars answered it. Dormant creatures were infected, turning into pitch-black beasts. Under the Devil King's command, they began to move toward the village. Alongside the Cyclops, whose hair Lucy had trimmed, and the enormous long-legged spiders, there were giant crocodiles, demon bears, strange monstrous birds, and other huge beasts. Whether it was a cautious probe or utter contempt for humans, the Devil King had used his unique ability, demonization of living beings. The ground trembled, and the little village suddenly found itself surrounded by a dense swarm of demonic creatures. The expanded pink magic barrier shielded the villagers behind it. Black Magician Girl stopped hesitating, lifted her staff, and began isolating the incoming black halos, preventing those with weak magic from being demonized on the spot. So many! All the forest's magic beasts have been drawn here. Lucy clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. The demonized beasts were far more ferocious-looking than before. In the past, nervous guild recruits might have panicked, but Lucy, now adept with star dress, felt little fear toward these defeated opponents. What unsettled her was the sheer number of them. Some beasts were as large as small mountains, Others swarmed the sky and earth. Looking up, they formed a dense, endless black mass. Compared to that tide of creatures, the village, normally open and roomy, suddenly felt tiny, the people inside almost swallowed by the scale of the threat. To demonize and control so many creatures at once, no wonder it's ranked with the phoenix as a legendary danger. A pity it's a rare spawn, Chess muttered, calm as ever. He drew back the fighting intent rippling around him. He had been itching to test the Dragon Slayer's power, but the Devil King had obliged him by activating his demonization halo. Chess flicked his fingers, drawing two monster cards from the void, Cursed Dragon and City Guard Winged Dragon. He intended to throw them into the Devil King's energy vortex before it dissipated, turning the two dragons hostile so he could observe how the Dragon Slayer's anti-dragon effect scaled. Then next, let this guy see your true strength, Chess said. He tossed the cards out beyond the pink barrier. I'll need to trouble you a bit. Come out! City Guard Winged Dragon! Cursed Dragon! Golden magic circles flared, and in the shimmering light, two draconic shadows unfolded. The dark blue skeletal tone of one and the yellow bones of the other streaked straight into the Devil King's black halo. Understanding their master's aim, both dragons did not resist the invading energy vortex. Their scales blackened visibly, their roars grew savage, and their eyes shone red with hostility. Summoned monsters obey a summoning principle similar to Lucy's celestial spirit keys. Even if a summoned creature is controlled, the summoner can force it back to the graveyard by closing the gate or defeat its controller. Chess could also use his magic card brainwashing if needed, so he wasn't worried. His only uncertainty was the dragon's race categorization. Would demonized dragons be treated as demon type or dragon type? A pillar of light from the distant forest answered that question. Thanks. Since you're my companions, I'll save you for last before I cut you down, the Dragon Slayer said, suspended within the column. His shattered armor had fallen away, revealing a battered torso marked with deep tooth and claw wounds, the scars of fighting giant dragons. Golden flecks coalesced into the dragon fang greatsword in his hands. It gleamed, and a new aura pulsed from it. The Dragon Slayer's dragon-slaying effect had activated. His attack jumped from 2,600 to 3,600, already higher than Chess's current aces, Chaos Black Magician and Chaos Swordsman. What kind of magic is this? The Devil King hissed, alarm creeping over his haughty face. After hundreds of years of sleep, humans had learned a burst-type enchantment that instantly amplified strength? Or had the swordsman been holding back all along? No, his intuition zinged to life. This change had to be tied to the two dragons Chess had just cast into the Devil King's halo. The Devil King had seen dragons roam the continent in his era. He knew their terror. He'd been pleased to gain two of them, but a trick seemed afoot. There was little time for thought. The powered-up Dragon Slayer struck decisively, releasing a blade of energy through the sky. The sword wave shattered sound barriers as it tore toward the Devil King, gouging the earth and carving a ravine through the forest. At the bottom, the Devil King lay with his chest mangled. Black blood flowed from a long cut from shoulder to abdomen. Damn humans, how dare you? The Devil King snarled, eyes reddening with fury. He shifted his focus from Chess to the Dragon Slayer and bellowed, I'll tear you apart. He sprouted demonic wings and charged at incredible speed, wrapped in a hurricane of dark energy. Ha ha! Perfect, you're exactly what I needed. The Dragon Slayer laughed, fearlessly raising his sword. The two slammed into one another above the village. Holy light and demonic darkness detonated like fireworks. Shockwaves tore at the clouds and shook the sky. Back on the ground, the demonized magic beasts surged into battle. The earth trembled. Houses crumbled like toys wherever the creatures passed. The uproar frightened the village chief and the other villagers. They scurried back to stand by Lucy and Chess, frozen more by anxiety than by action. Then I'll leave these ones to you, Chess said with a bored yawn, glancing at Lucy and Black Magician Girl. The rampaging beasts held no interest for him. They were perfect test subjects to see how well Lucy could handle a real threat. No problem. I'll take Cursed Dragon and City Guard Winged Dragon, Black Magician Girl cried, excited. Perhaps from time in fairy tale, or a mischievous streak, she seemed keen to tangibly beat up teammates. Mostly, though, their new ferocity was just a show. The other beasts were too weak to be genuine threats. Your look is way too aggressive, Lucy shot back, hands on her hips, mock offended and adorable. Then Lucy, how about you go fight those two dragons? Black Magician Girl grinned. Lucy eyed the cursed dragon, which spat black flames, and the city guard winged dragon, which whipped gale force winds with each wing beat. Without hesitation, she snapped, "Demon magic beasts, prepare to be thoroughly beaten." "Open, Gate of the Lion, Loki," she called, and Star Dress, Leo form. Having finished her incantations, Lucy leaped into the fray with Loki at her side, moving with decisive speed that surprised even the onlookers. "Oh dear, I forgot to warn her the demonization makes them stronger, and there aren't just one or two," Black Magician Girl murmured with a playful smirk as she sat on her staff and streaked toward the two airborne dragons. Explosions of magic and impact flared everywhere, pushing the battle between the fairy tale wizards and the ancient Devil King to its peak. Chess remained oddly detached. Beyond throwing out cards to finish off demon beasts Lucy missed, most of his attention was on the aerial duel between the Dragon Slayer and the Devil King. Once its effect had activated, the Dragon Slayer had become markedly more dangerous. Under the continuous flow of Chess's magic, it had begun to suppress the still incomplete Devil King. Victory seemed only a matter of time. Two dragons had amplified it this much. If 10,000 dragons were ever to pour out from an eclipse gate, as in the original timeline, the scene would be spectacular. Chess wondered if the Dragon Slayer's amplification had a limit or if it depended on his own magic reserves. The slight acceleration of magic through his body suggested a link. In any case, a 7-star card with this potential was a tremendous gain, especially if it could later fuse into something like a super magician swordsman. "Eclair! Eclair! What's wrong?" Meng Meng's worried cries snapped Chess back to the present. Eclair had collapsed to the ground, hands clutching her head, her pretty face contorted in pain. The half of the phoenix stone pendant hanging at her throat had reacted to the Devil King's intensifying aura, flashing with searing light. Fragmented images she hadn't fully remembered were assaulting her mind, battering her spirit. Chess frowned and stepped over. He reached out and pulled Meng Meng back. The magic card bloomed, and 3 miniature light swords appeared, circling the phoenix stone. Under the sealing effect of the Saint Light protective seal swords, the pendant calmed, and Eclair slipped into unconsciousness. "Don't worry, her breathing is stable. She should be fine for now," Chess said, stroking Meng Meng's furry head. Since Eclair was a doll she had made from found materials, Meng Meng's fur felt less plush than Happy's, but he patted the little creature anyway. "Master Chess, thank you," Meng Meng bowed. "No need to be so formal," Chess smiled. He meant to ask Meng Meng's gender, but before he could, a huge mushroom cloud erupted in the distance. From the blazing aftermath staggered a man, covered in blood, clutching a strangely shaped stone egg. The Devil King had been defeated. "Brother Chess, Demon Slayer? No, Dragon Slayer. Successful. I should go back and rest." The wounded man managed with a strained laugh. The Dragon Slayer looked at his summoned companions, the two dragons, with a hint of regret. His body, exhausted, broke into countless motes of light and dissipated. The stone egg fell from the man's hands and rolled a few times before coming to rest at Chess's feet. "You did well," Chess murmured to the fading light and then bent to pick up the egg. He planned to hand it to the village chief and close out the commission. But his pupils narrowed. A chill tuned his senses. Tiny ice crystals floated in the air, each humming with terrifying magic. A bone-deep cold slammed into the field. In an instant, everyone, the demonized beasts, Lucy, Loki, Black Magician Girl, the two dragons, even those fighting far off, was frozen solid. A thin veil of violet ice spread out like a shroud. Within breaths, the village was transformed into a crystal-dead stillness. Lightning eddies sheared the surface of the ice. Chess stepped free of the fractured shards, gaze cold and dark, and looked toward the village entrance. "Oh, you managed to activate a card so precisely even with me hiding my aura, and you transferred everyone around you too." A man's chuckle drifted across the frozen air, mingled with surprise and a cultured admiration. As expected of a fairy tale S-class mage, steel armor flashed against the refracted light of the ice crystals. On his chest, the word 0 gleamed in stark relief. The man bore a passing resemblance to Gray, But this was no ordinary wizard. He was a member of Tartaros's 9 demon gates, an ice devil slayer. Absolute Zero Silver. Chapter 194, Silver Fullbuster. Chapter 1, Fullbuster Crack. Outside the village, ice shattered. A celestial spirit shaped like an old pendulum clock, long-limbed, expressionless, emerged from the falling slabs of ice. Lucy had curled up inside the clock body. Her wide eyes scanned the strange, frozen world around her in confusion. Horologium had appeared just before she was frozen, sensing danger and protecting her in time. What happened? How did the village suddenly turn into this? Lucy asked. Despite the deadly silence around them, Horologium dutifully relayed her words and replied, Lucy-sama, in that instant, a very powerful cold magic power erupted. Powerful cold magic power? Lucy was about to ask more when scattered points of light began to glow across Horologium's body. If you encounter danger again, I won't be able to come out and protect you, the spirit warned. Lucy-sama, you must be extremely careful. With that solemn remark, the pendulum clock, having exhausted itself to block the freezing, burst into smoke with a bang and vanished. Horologium had no combat ability, but its automatic crisis detection mode made it an incredible life-saving tool for celestial spirit mages with low defense and HP. Calling it the strongest celestial spirit wasn't an exaggeration. Suddenly losing her support, Lucy tumbled to the ground. Her padded skirt softened the fall, but the thick layer of pale purple solid ice under her made her shiver uncontrollably. So cold. How did it get this cold all of a sudden? She muttered, hugging herself. I didn't feel anything inside Horologium. Wait, where are Chess, Eclair, and the old village chief? She glanced up and froze when she saw the giant demon ice sculpture looming before her. Ignoring the chill that filled the air, she ran back toward the village entrance. There, standing alone, was Silver Fullbuster. A cold wind lifted the gray cape over his armor. Even from behind, Lucy went pale. An absolute, bone-deep cold radiated off him, and her hands and feet trembled. Silver made no attempt to hide his aura. To Lucy, he no longer looked like a man, but a terrible monster wrapped in a storm of magic power. Sharp claws and fangs visible only in the impression of menace, eyes like red coals. Even Pakas, Quattro Cerberus's strongest mage, would have backed down the moment he felt that oppressive presence. Surely not someone who'd just joined Fairy Tale a few months ago. Lucy, stay where you are. Don't come any closer. A familiar voice shouted. Relief washed through her. Chess's voice calmed her racing heart. If Chess was all right, then Eclair and the village chief probably were too. No other frozen sculptures stood in the village, so Chess had most likely protected them with his card magic. Silver glanced casually at Lucy. Little girl, don't be so nervous. My target isn't you, he said, and then scratched his head with a troubled expression. I was going to handle this without showing myself and then unfreeze you, but you all had ways to avoid it. He sighed. It's a headache. I haven't had much to do with humans in a long time. Where should I start? I suppose I should introduce myself. Despite the terrifying cold radiating from him, his tone was oddly polite. Lucy felt an uncomfortable familiarity. Before she could place it, Silver continued. Hello, magicians of Fairy Tale. I am Silver. I'm one of the 9 demon gates of the Dark Guild Tartaros. Dark Guild? Lucy's heart jumped. She didn't know then about the Balam Alliance. She didn't know what Tartaros meant. Chess, however, stayed calm and pretended ignorance. Tartaros? I didn't expect a Dark Guild to come making such a formal request, he said, keeping the tone light. Silver shook his head. No, I'm not here for a request. I came because I heard there was a demon. His gaze swept the ruined forest beyond the village. He spread his hands and chuckled. I didn't expect to witness such a spectacular Demon King subjugation battle. The smile at the corner of his mouth hardened. His eyes turned fierce. So, magicians of Fairy Tale, hand over the Demon King's egg and those who turned into demons to me. Silver's hatred of demons ran deep. His family and friends, some accounts said even he himself, had been killed by the demon Deliora, and later his corpse was targeted by the Tartaros demon Keith and controlled through necromancy. He had sworn to exterminate demons, even learning Ice Devil Slayer magic in his quest to kill the strongest flame demon, End, from Zaref's book. That was why he had come to this demon village deep in the boundary forest. Chess understood Silver's motive perfectly. He narrowed his eyes. He'd prepared the Demon King's egg as a gift for Mira, and he would not allow Silver to personally destroy the villagers who were once human. Explaining things would be too long, and Silver's single-minded obsession with slaying demons meant he probably wouldn't listen anyway. "If you want it that badly," Chess said, rotating the magic circle beneath his feet. He rattled the cards that contained the demon villagers and the Demon King's egg, smiling thinly. "Then come and take it." A surge of battle intent translated into a wild, dark golden magic power that blasted outward, whipping up a hurricane and an overwhelming sense of oppression. Silver gave up trying to reason. His expression went dark. An equally deep and terrifying aura erupted from him. "Heh heh," Silver said, a cold, dangerous smile on his face. "Young man who doesn't understand the situation, you'll regret this foolish decision." Dark gold magic and deep purple magic met across the frozen field. Their clash formed a compressive force field that made the ice give brittle cracks and the air itself feel heavy and uneasy. Under its pull, broken slabs of ice floated upward as if defying gravity, bobbing around Chess and Silver. A crushing pressure hung over the whole village. Lucy's pupils shrank. Her heart thudded in her chest as she inched back to a safer distance. She still didn't understand why the two of them had started fighting, and after watching Chess in battle before, she knew the most important thing was to make sure she didn't get caught in the crossfire. Clashes between powerful fighters could hurt a mortal at any moment. Chess and Silver seemed to come to a tacit agreement. After Lucy retreated, they pulled their dispersed magic back into themselves. For a moment, the floating ice lost its support and fell, smashing against the frozen ground with 1,000 sharp cracks. In an instant, both of them vanished from where they stood and reappeared directly in front of one another, fists slammed together with overwhelming force. Boom! Their strike sent a shockwave out like a tsunami. A vicious wind ripped through the village, and the blast of force shattered the surrounding ice-covered houses, flattening them into a chaotic, level mess. Ice crystals and rubble exploded outward as Chess and Silver locked eyes, their capes snapping wildly in the blast. "Oh, you're remarkably strong for someone so young," Silver said, a faint smile on his lips as he kept power gathered in his fist. "Thanks for the compliment, middle-aged uncle from Tartaros," Chess replied calmly, then added, as if it were an introduction, "I'm Chess of Fairy Tale." "So you're the mage who beat the 18 fighting gods on Galuna Island?" Silver said at once. Tartaros, even as a guild formed to hunt their leader End, kept tabs on other magic guilds. Silver had been away fighting demons for years and rarely came back to headquarters, but the name Chess left an impression. "Still, that's irrelevant. I've already decided to freeze you." His eyes narrowed and pale purple crystals formed along his right fist. An icy chill radiated outward. Chess felt his arm going numb as the freezing magic threatened to lock him up and slow his own power. Silver took advantage of that and pressed forward. But just as he prepared to blast Chess away, resistance blossomed in his path. Dark gold light swirled, and a broken iron chain clinked on the surface of Chess's arm. "Don't underestimate me, Uncle. I've had plenty of practice against ice mages," Chess said, summoning the sealed one's right arm and violently dispelling the freezing magic. Chess glanced up. "Up close, you look a lot like our guild's ice make mage." At that, Silver's composed expression tightened. He had investigated his son's whereabouts for years. The commotion Gray had caused on his behalf would have made the connection obvious even without looking. Fear twisted him for a breath. The fear his son would see the ghastly state Silver had taken on, and he lashed out, driving his knee into Chess's abdomen to cut him off. Chess narrowed his eyes and met the attack with a knee of his own. Their knees collided with a deafening impact. The force shattered the ice beneath them, spidering cracks outward in every direction. While they clashed, a magic circle flared beneath Chess's feet. He'd used the flying ice fragments as cover and completed an incantation. "I don't use low-level ice make. This is Ice Devil Slayer magic. It can even slay demons," Silver shouted and raised his left hand. "Ice Demon's Roaring Fountain." Pale purple light bloomed from the circle, but no solid fountain of ice formed. Instead, as the lights tangled, a card that had been laid over the Slayer circle flipped, revealing opposing arrow symbols. Chess's trap card, Magic Cylinder, activated. The cylinder that absorbed the ice demon's roaring fountain appeared over Chess's head, its aimed back at Silver and pulsing with the same pale light. Silver, caught off guard by the unfamiliar card magic, crossed his arms just in time for the redirected attack. The fountain struck him full on, the explosive force sending him sliding back over the ice, smashing through a few houses before he managed to stop. "That's an interesting card technique," Silver said as he righted himself. "But here's a reminder. Ice magic doesn't hurt me." He lowered his arms and smiled with cold confidence. Slayer magic protected him. Unless an even stronger attack of the same element was used, ordinary ice couldn't damage him. Chess flicked away the stray ice chips from his clothes, unfazed. The attack had been a test, nothing more. From the direct exchange of power, he had gauged Silver's strength. Silver's ability to easily handle mages like Natsu and Gray, both of whom had awakened their second magic sources and trained for a year, put him well above Jalal and Laxus. Apart from Ignia, the fire god dragon, he was the strongest enemy Chess had faced so far. But that didn't discourage Chess. If anything, it stoked his fighting spirit. An opponent who forced him to push his limits was exactly the challenge he wanted. He might even draw new cards and grow stronger from this. "As a return," Chess said, "let me show you my other magic." He drew a breath. His hands came together, and a sacred aura, completely different from the dark gold magic before, erupted around him. Crimson wind surged outward with a roar that felt like a dragon's cry. The pressure of it made muscles tense. Even Silver's pupils widened. "So that's it. I didn't expect a dragon slayer," Silver muttered, taken aback as a dragon-shaped phantom flickered in his vision, and the oppression of the magic tightened. "To be precise," Chess corrected, "bathed in crimson power, it's a god slayer." Close inspection confirmed it. A small unicorn horn had appeared on his forehead, the Book of Secret Arts and the Pot of Greed hovered at his side, and his body had reached its peak condition. Lucy, watching from a distance, noticed another oddity and blinked. When had Chess taken off his shirt? "Magic used to slay gods, huh? Interesting," Silver said, glancing at the discarded clothes at Chess's feet. Then, as if stirred by the fight and no longer holding back, he pulled off his steel armor, revealing the black compression suit and defined muscles underneath. He'd set aside his hatred for companionship from his son's guild. Today he was ready to fight with everything. The armor clanged onto the ice and left a dent. It looked heavy. "Why are you taking your armor off, too?" Lucy blurted, wide-eyed. Her shock wasn't from Silver's physique. If anything, the way he moved while stripping down made him look like a certain pervert from the guild, and that alone made Lucy explode with exasperation. Chapter 196, God-Killing Magic, Sky Holy Sword, First Sky Holy Sword. On the field, a pale purple magic circle bloomed in an instant. Silver stepped forward and struck first, raising his arm and swinging down. Ice Devil's Ice Meteor. Whoosh! Moisture in the air condensed, forging a dense volley of solid ice that shot toward Chess. Chess dropped low, crimson dragon scales wrapping his legs and pulsing with power, and leapt aside as the first prismatic ice block crashed where he had stood. The cold burst outward, freezing a towering pillar of ice on impact. A single ice block had that much force? Before Lucy, watching the fight, could finish her thought, the sky filled with ice rain, dense, prismatic, a net of cold that severely restricted Chess's movement. He remained unfazed. Stirring his magic, he enveloped his whole body, and eyes narrowing, cut through the falling shards in a streak of crimson light. He found the best path quickly, weaving and dodging the onslaught. Bang, bang, bang! The crimson light traced a path through the village, leaving ice pillars erupting wherever it passed. To Lucy's eyes, it looked almost as if Chess were drawing those pillars himself. As the last meteor exploded behind him, Chess used the momentum of his high-speed movement to vault into the air and hover directly over Silver. Crimson magic coalesced in his raised right leg, shaping into the phantom claw of a sky dragon. Sky dragon, stomp, boom! The sky dragon kick, wrapped in howling wind, smashed through the ice-laced ground and gouged a deep pit. The shockwave tore spiderweb cracks across the earth. Half the village was left in ruins from that single strike. Amid the swirling dust, Chess flipped out of the impact zone in a roll of agile backflips. Silver regained his footing and countered immediately, slamming his palm into the ground. Ice Devil's 5 pillars. A roar rose through the smoke as 5 thick ice pillars burst from the earth, coiling and striking like living ice serpents at Ches down in the pit. The pillars collided and outlined a massive purple magic circle. At its center, a colossal ice spire erupted skyward, pouring out bone-numbing cold that chilled the air. The battlefield fell into an eerie silence, only scattered ice crystals drifting down. This technique is used to handle high-level demons. Not even sunlight melts it easily, Silver said, a faint smile at his lips. If this is the end, magician of fairy tale, I'd be disappointed. As if on cue, a tiny point of light blinked inside the giant ice pillar. The light spread at a visible speed and in an instant became blinding. The pillar trembled, fissures of dazzling white light cracking through, bathing the field in a sacred glow. With a final shudder, it split and shattered. No matter how high its level, if you seal its properties, it's just ordinary ice. Ches hovered, the holy light seal sword in his hand. A coiled sky dragon phantom loomed behind him, its nearly solid eyes full of oppressive power. The sword's radiance and the dragon's presence combined into a stunning, terrifying image. "So you sealed my magic? I didn't expect this card," Silver began, staring hard at the sword. The sword's sacred aura made him a dead man, visibly uncomfortable. From a distance, Lucy couldn't help blurting, "Wait, the holy light seal sword can do that?" She briefly thought, "Isn't that card supposed to restrict an enemy?" No, she remembered Ches using it as if it were a comb on Mira's hair. A multifunctional light sword? Ches grinned in midair and spread his hands. "I was just making that up. Actually, I used a magic barrier the moment it was frozen." Silver's face showed surprise. Ches liked the reaction. He suddenly changed his tone, pointing the sword at Silver below. "But it'll still hurt a lot if you get hit." Crimson magic surged and poured into the sword's tip. Under the enhancement of God Slayer magic, the holy light seal sword swelled, ferocious dragon patterns crawling across its blade and staining the sacred light with a violent blood-red glow. The red light painted Chess's face. Silver's expression hardened. Silver roared and gathered his magic. From the purple space he'd pulled out, a purple ice prism appeared, denser and colder than any before. "Godslayer magic! Sky Holy Sword!" Chess shouted. "Ice Devil's Winter Prism," Silver answered. The crimson sword and the purple prism hurtled together, drawing long trails across the air. They slammed head-on. Godslayer and Demon Slayer magics tore at one another. The sword tip and the prism's peak shattered inch by inch as points of light and shards of ice erupted. As the two magics annihilated each other, Chess and Silver became streaks of light, closing for a direct collision. Boom! Where weapon met prism, now came a raw, devastating clash of fists, primitive power that sounded like it might rip the air itself. This was no probing greeting. It was God versus demon, both fighters throwing everything into the strike. At the storm's center, Chess saw his outstretched fist frosting over and shifted tactics. Twisting his body, he gathered magic into his left arm and formed dragon wings. Sky Dragon Wing Attack! The dragon wings spun, whipping a tearing hurricane that struck Silver's chest and hurled him from the storm's center. Ice Devil's Wall! Silver snapped back, creating an ice wall beneath his feet and using it to absorb the blow. Planting himself, he used the wall's reaction to launch forward, closing the distance with even more force. His kick hit Chess, sending the crimson-clad fighter careening from the sky. Chess crashed into a distant forest like a falling meteor. Silver took a breath and flooded his body with magic, ready to press the advantage. Suddenly his body stiffened, roots of golden light crawling over his limbs and coalescing into a hexagram that wrapped him in binding energy. Trap card, Curse of the Hexagram. Activate. Before Silver could break free, thunder rolled from high above. A lightning-forged bolt, crackling with electric arcs, smashed through the clouds and dropped like a spear. Rumble. The Sky Dragon's lightning calling bullet detonated above Silver, blasting him down from the sky with overwhelming force. Chapter 197. Chess blown to smithereens. The few rounds of magic clashes in the air looked slow, but in reality they had occurred in an instant. From Lucy's perspective, she saw a light sword and ice shards annihilate each other. Then a crimson streak and a dark purple line collide violently a few times before both fell to the ground. What remained clear were the village billowing thick smoke and the devastated stretch of forest. A gentle breeze swept the smoke and dust aside, revealing Chess and Silver standing among the ruins. Chess raised a hand to rub the ice stuck to his chest, brushing the shards through his hair and slicking it back into place. For a moment, he looked like an adventurer fresh from a world of ice and snow. The blood flow in his body felt slow and sluggish, and he had to constantly circulate magic power to dispel the chill. It was the attribute effect attached to Ice Devil Slayer magic. When Silver had fought Gray in the original tale, this kind of reaction hadn't appeared. Whether Silver had held back or Gray had some resistance was unclear, but after engaging Silver in close combat personally, Chess now fully understood the terror of Ice Devil Slayer magic. It was on an entirely different level from Gray's ice make. Silver wore a similar expression, watching the crimson dragon scales covering Chess's body with a hint of unease. Though he had managed to open an ice shield in time to block part of the summoning lightning bolt, his body was still wounded. His tight vest hung in tatters, and tiny electrical arcs danced across his exposed muscles. Those currents had seeped into his bones and were steadily weakening his magic power, exactly why his frown deepened. "Enough with the pointless talk. Ice block, Uncle," Chess said, having mostly dispelled the chill in his body. He extended an arm and waved at Silver with a smile. "Don't you want the cards in my hand? If you don't hurry, they'll get warm from my touch." "Pointless? I rarely praise anyone sincerely." But Silver fluffed his hair in irritation. "And that nickname, Ice Block Uncle, that's just rude." His tone shifted mid-sentence. A strong wind whipped around him, and his magic power spiked, so dense it felt tangible. So he spread his arms and opened his mouth slightly. The terrifying power surged toward his throat, sucked in as if by some vacuum, making his chest swell. "Wait, that stance?" Lucy's eyes widened, and she took 2 small steps back. The familiar movement made her think of Dragon Slayer magic. After the incredible display just now, she could sense something big was coming. The ground trembled as the violent eruption of magic power reached Chess's feet. Chess recognized the move without panic. Casting a quick glance at a few ice sculptures off to the side, he stomped, crushing the earth beneath him, and the complete phantom of the Sky Dragon erupted behind him. The 2 powers grew and collided in the air, creating turbulent currents. When the currents reached their limit and exploded, Silver, who had seized the initiative, finished his release first. "Ahaha! Sorry, young man, I was faster!" he shouted. "Ice devils, roar!" A terrifying column of purple freezing energy burst forth like a volcano, tearing up the ground in its path, shattering space as it barreled toward Chess, who was a half-step slower. The freezing breath arrived in an instant, filling Chess's field of vision and cutting off every escape route. Even if Chess wanted to interrupt his magic, it was far too late. "Chess, Lucy cried out in shock. The purple blast swept over the place where Chess had stood and the forest behind it. Boom! After an enormous explosion, a mushroom cloud rose from the scorched woodland, lit with fire and thick smoke. When the dust settled, the scorched trench, studded with ice crystals, appeared empty. Was Chess blown to smithereens? No. Lucy, heart-pounding, spotted a trap card magic circle that hadn't fully dissipated where Chess had been. Crimson magic erupted from another direction. The ice sculptures of Black Magician Girl and Curse Dragon had appeared, but the Castle Guardian Dragon that should have been with them was gone. The position swap trap card had been activated. So the thing that got blown to pieces was actually the Castle Guardian Dragon? Lucy breathed, relief flooding her. She allowed herself a quick, silent moment of mourning for the Guardian Dragon, no more than 3 seconds, before it could jump out of its card space and tuck her into the butt of a scolding slap. On the field, Chess had used the swap to gain time and didn't waste it. He took control of the Sky Dragon Phantom, and the dragon's lower jaw opened as a concentrated, violent energy built within it. "Godslayer's secret art, superconductive wave," Chess roared. Offense and defense were reversed. This time Silver, eyes widening in surprise, had to stand and take an attack that could crush anything in its path. The dragon breath struck, its godly aura detonating on impact and obliterating the village that still clung in outline to existence. The blast turned it to nothing. The terrifying commotion lasted nearly a minute before subsiding. When the smoke cleared, Silver lay in a scorched crater, bleeding and panting, still hunched in a crossed-arm defensive posture. He looked drained, his initial swagger replaced by a listless, injured figure cracked and scarred from the attack. "I have to admit, to be able to unleash a breath like that," Silver said, forcing his eyelids open to look at Chess, who was walking toward him. "Stop pretending. That wasn't your main body," Chess said bluntly. The wounded Silver showed a puzzled expression, then smiled faintly as his figure shattered into ice shards. Frost sprayed the battlefield, and from another direction, Silver's true body walked out. He, too, was hurt, with a bloody forehead and bleeding arms, clearly weakened by the Godslayer secret art. "If you knew it was fake, why still cast that magic?" Silver asked, slow and steady as he tried to normalize his breathing. Chess paused, then laughed as if it were obvious. "It's a fight. You can't lose momentum." He'd suspected the trick when he unleashed the superconductive wave, but not with absolute certainty. Hesitating wasn't his style. His thought had been, who cares, just blast it first. That confidence came from buff-type magic cards and the unused stamina potions he still had. Even if he couldn't seriously injure Silver, he could at least blunt his aura. It was a win-win. Something like respect flickered across Silver's eyes. He seemed not to have expected such a straightforward answer. After a few seconds of silence, he laughed out loud. "Aha! I like your personality. It's such a waste for a man like you to be restricted inside a light guild. How about joining me? Team up to slay devils." After this fight, Silver had fully recognized Chess's power and harbored a vague intuition that if it's this guy, maybe he could actually defeat End, the strongest devil. So he offered to recruit him. "I'm not interested," Chess said, spreading his hands. "But if the guild or my companions are your enemies, I won't join you. I'll just eliminate them." Silver rested his chin on his hand and fell into thought. A guild, huh? Seeing that recruiting Chess was hopeless for now, he sighed and glanced toward Lucy. "Hey, little girl over there, you'd better move farther away. I can hardly control the next magic myself." His tone was casual, but Chess noticed an incredibly ferocious magic fluctuation from him. This had to be the final blow. Bold as ever, Silver had just announced it out loud. Chess's eyes flickered. Outwardly, he remained still, but he began quietly setting up the trap card Sakuretsu armor, preparing to show the young Silver how a card player could be cunning. At the same time, Kuriboh, the card that could block a fatal strike, was already in place. If even Sakuretsu armor, boosted by multiple buffs, couldn't stop it, Chess would have to consider grabbing Lucy and fleeing. "Do I even have to worry at this distance? Just how powerful is that magic?" Lucy fretted, moving frantically to find a safer place to hide. Silver retracted his gaze, crossed his arms above his head, and drew every last scrap of magic power into himself. "Take this, Chess." "Absolute zero, Silver World." "Ice Make, Rose Garden," interrupted a voice. A burst of ice roses launched out and disrupted Silver's casting, forcing him to halt and dodge. Hair whipping, a sensual figure leaped down from a magic airship hovering overhead and landed beside Chess. Chapter 198, New Card, Gilfer Demon. "Are you all right, Chess?" Ultier asked, holding the crystal ball in her right hand, her white robes fluttering lightly. "I'm fine." Chess exhaled, a little surprised at how quickly Ultier had responded to the Demon King's message. As the oppressive magic power around Silver slowly ebbed, he stopped chanting the trap card. "The Magic Council? Now's not the time to pick a fight with them." Silver cast one last look up at the Council's enforcement unit aboard the magic airship, then glanced from Ultier, standing on the rose-iced ground, back to Chess. "Young man, I'll hold on to the Demon King's egg and those demons for now. We'll have a proper fight next time we meet." Frost formed over his body, cracked like glass, and he vanished from sight. Chess's fingers twitched twice. After a moment's thought, he gave up the idea of pursuing. Putting the Council's mooks aside, even with Ultier's help, the odds of taking Silver down here wouldn't bring any real benefits. It might even draw Tartaros's attention prematurely. Fairy Tail was still in a fragile stage of recovery. Directly confronting one of the continent's strongest dark guilds would be like smashing an egg against a boulder. The Fairy Tail emblem on his right arm marked him clearly. Small skirmishes could build reputation, but matters that affected the guild's survival demanded caution. Besides, Silver was a kind of power-up for Gray. There wasn't a pressing reason to capture him, and there might even be a chance to turn him into a powerful ally. Chess wondered. Silver had died years ago, yet both his body and consciousness were intact. Could such a being be revived? The thought nagged at him after the fight, but it would have to wait until Fairy Tail was strong enough to contend with Tartaros. For now, the real gain was the new card that had surfaced deep within his consciousness. A stream of golden light outlined the card's image and revealed a 6-star fiend-type monster with dark red wings, wicked barbs, and a ferocious face. Dark Fiend, Guilford Demon. Its effect wasn't as dominant as a Dragon Slayer, nor was its level on par with Chaos Swordsman or Chaos Black Magician, but it was a solid addition to his deck, and the new card had boosted his magic power again. Far in the forest, Silver stood on a fallen trunk, watching the direction Chess and the others had taken. That ice make he used just now, it was exactly like Ulu's. Ultir's tears? He smiled faintly, a shadow of nostalgia crossing his features. My foolish son has gathered reliable companions. The smile vanished, swallowed by the darkness of the trees. To complete his revenge, tied to the demons in Zeref's book, he had to walk in shadow and could not acknowledge his son. Back with the others, Ultir only relaxed once the terrifying magic power that had made everyone's heart stop had fully dissipated. Where did that guy come from who radiated so much danger? She asked Chess. He said he was a member of the 9 demon gates of the Dark Guild Tartaros, Chess answered. Ultir's brows drew together. Tartaros? She repeated. Why would that Dark Guild, the one even the Council knows so little about, show up here? Tartaros and Grimoire Heart were 2 of the 3 major powers in the Balam alliance of Dark Guilds, but their relationship was more one of non-aggression than partnership. Dark Guilds rarely shared information about core members. Alliances were fragile and treachery common. Even though Ultir was one of the 7 kin of Purgatory in Grimoire Heart, she had never seen someone like Silver up close. As she thought of the order Hades had given her days ago to return to Grimoire Heart and combined it with the Council's inquiries, a new worry teased her mind. Perhaps it was connected to the 6 demon generals who had been making moves recently. He said he wanted to destroy the Demon King's egg and the villagers, Chess said, glancing toward the direction Silver had vanished. Ultir, still lost in her thoughts, snapped back to the scene and swept her gaze over the ruined clearing. She covered her forehead with one hand and let out a helpless sigh. So you still went after it. You're reckless, she scolded, though she wasn't truly surprised Chess had managed to face a being of legend. This man before her had the power to shatter Absolute Zero and defeat Jelal, powers she could not help but admire. If we'd interfered, we wouldn't have gotten the commission reward, Chess said, with a small smile, as he withdrew the card holding many villagers. Lucy, who had been hiding a short distance away, rushed forward and completed the magic circle. Eclair, Momon, and the villagers were immediately released and returned to reality. The old village chief and the others stood amid the ruins, faces blank and confused. There hadn't been time to explain everything. After a few halting words and the realization that the ground beneath their feet was once their village, the villagers' mouths twitched in embarrassment and sorrow. So, village chief, the Demon King's egg has been restored to its original form. The commission is complete. Chess took the Demon King's egg out of another card and offered it to the village chief. Do you want to keep this? Ah? Thank you very much, the old chief said, still not quite out of his grief. He reached for the egg, but found it adhered to Chess's palm. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't take it. Mr. Chess, do you want to keep it? Chess repeated with an affable smile. Well, let's hold on to it for now and see how things go. The chief hesitated, thinking it over as if it were part of the commission. But the egg stayed fixed in Chess's hand. Eventually he sighed and waved his hand magnanimously. No. Relying on something with such great danger is not a proper way to survive. As thanks for the commission, the Demon King's egg will be given to you, Mr. Chess. Please look after it for us. Is that so? Then I'll do my best, Chess said, and with lightning-fast movements slipped the egg into a card. Lucy watched, stunned. He could even force it like that? Chess wasn't even pretending anymore. Her amazement vanished in an instant when she noticed demonic blotches appearing across the old village chief's wrinkled face. Sharp horns pushed out from his forehead. Wait, old village chief? Your face? No, why are? Lucy looked around in horror. Not only the chief, but the guard, Berest, and several others had developed demonic traits in the blink of an eye, turning into hideous monsters. The villagers who had just come out of the card space took in the scene, and despite initial shock, they did not panic. Instead, they accepted the transformation with calm resolve. Lucy-sama, please don't worry, the old village chief said, looking up into the distance. His cloudy eyes had a fierce determination. Since our family members who have been demonized cannot return to their original state, then we should become monsters too. In truth, the villagers had already known the origin of the Demon King's egg and had made their decision long ago. They had even risked following Chess and Lucy into the underground altar shrouded in black mist to confront the Demon King. They had accepted this outcome. But isn't this still too strange? Lucy said, heartbroken. You were all clearly human. This village was formed by a bunch of homeless people gathering for warmth, the chief replied with a hearty laugh. Our human looks and skin matter less than being together. At his words, excited chatter rose behind the chief. Ha! So what if I become a demon? I was abandoned by my country long ago. I don't want to be human again. Zane's right. I actually think these demon wings are pretty cool. You idiot, look closely. It's me, Brick. Aha, sorry, I didn't recognize you. Hey, come look at my demon arm. It's dark purple. They grinned and teased one another, proud of their new traits. Lucy's shock softened as a reluctant smile spread across her face. Despite their monstrous appearances, they were still the same people. Whatever had been lost seemed outweighed by the joy of being together. The scene tugged at her imagination, and she couldn't help picturing her comrades in fairy tale as demons. Demon Natsu, eager to become the strongest. Demon Gray, stripping off his clothes to reveal an embarrassingly odd physique. Demon Urza, in Demon King's armor, taking on Nazgrel. Demon Happy, turned into a mosquito. Chess and Mira sneaking off to a demon cave on a date, and them having cute demon children. The innocent girl's mind wandered, and a flush rose unbidden to Lucy's face. Chapter 199. Come to Fairy Tale. Lucy, still a little flushed and dazed, rubbed the back of her head with an awkward smile as the old village chief peered at her in concern. Lucy-sama, are you all right? He asked. Yes. I just imagined a pretty interesting scene, Lucy said, laughing sheepishly. Probably nothing important. Chess gave her a sidelong look. Perhaps because she wrote novels, the girl's mind always wandered into odd, extravagant scenarios. She certainly had a vivid imagination. Lucy, having calmed, returned to the problem at hand. Village chief, isn't it too dangerous for you to live here among villagers who have turned completely into demons? She asked. She had seen how those demonized villagers had become brutal and unfeeling, and she didn't think they could live peacefully with the rest of the village. More important, would the village chief and the guards keep sliding into demonization until they too lost their minds? Could they stay sane? The old chief let out a heavy sigh. His wrinkled hands clenched, and his eyes shone with fierce determination. No matter the risk, even if I have to give my life, I will find a way to bring them back, he vowed. He had already lost so much. He couldn't give up the families and friends who had become monsters. The other villagers' faces reflected the same resolve. They were ready to do whatever it took to rescue their loved ones. The sight made Lucy think of her own guild, a place that was more family than organization. Moved, she punched the air and said, "Don't worry, village chief. Chess and I will help you." "Really? Thank you so much, Lucy-sama," the old man replied, tears welling in his eyes. They were ordinary people who knew little of magic. Having experienced magicians like Lucy and Chess, offer help greatly increased their chances. Chess, dragged into the promise against his will, shook his head and muttered, "Honestly, you're a good person, Lucy. A bit foolish, maybe, but that's one of your strengths." Excuse me," Chess interrupted, stepping forward and breaking up the warm moment between the grateful chief and the eager girl. "Is it possible that those who seemed completely demonized might regain their minds on their own?" Lucy and the old chief both froze, eyes wide. Ultir, arms folded nearby, looked at Chess and sighed. "As I thought, you were going to notice." "Wait, why is Ultir saying that too?" Lucy asked, even more confused. Chess couldn't help but cut through the awkwardness. "Did you forget the demons on Karuna Island?" Recognition flickered across Lucy's face. "Right, They, too, had been affected by the Demon King's power, but the demons on Karuna Island behaved like normal humans, no signs of violence. But the people here seemed to have completely lost their minds. Lucy hesitated. If I'm not mistaken, Altair said, that black mist of demonic particles you mentioned in the call is the Demon King's aura. Where that aura is strong, reason is suppressed and demonization takes over. That's what creates those abnormal behaviors. And that's also why those monsters stayed within the village instead of roaming off to attack others, Chess added. To be precise, calling them completely demonized is misleading. If their bodies show demonic traits, they're labeled demons, even if their minds are still there. With that explanation, Lucy finally saw the logic. So those people are, she began, looking to Chess for confirmation. The Demon King had been turned back into a stone egg and had reverted to an inert state. He couldn't emit the aura that wiped people's minds. Chess nodded and drew the cards he had used to contain the demonized villagers. Brilliant light sketched a magic circle into the clearing, and one by one, the figures of the villagers walked out of the circle. I'm back! I'm really back! Village Chief, I've been worried about you. What a mess I made while I was out! Chess had left the sound transmission from the cards on, so everyone nearby could hear. The reason the villagers inside the cards hadn't been released earlier was that when their consciousness returned, they were still in a kind of stone shell state and needed time to readjust. Names spilled out: Howe, Taft, Samar, Lake, and the old chief and the rest ran forward, embracing them, tears of joy flowing freely. The setting sun filtered through the trees, scattering warm light across the battered clearing and catching on the wet cheeks of those who had once been monsters. It was a moving scene of reunions and relief. Lucy, Chess, and Altair watched, smiling at the sight of families finding one another again. A short distance away, where the sun's glow couldn't reach, a brown-haired girl stood alone. Her expression was distant and sad. I didn't turn into a demon like everyone else, she whispered as she looked at her hands, still human. Eclair bore the blood of a phoenix, a creature on par with the Demon King, and that made her naturally resistant to the Demon King's aura. From the moment the village began changing, and perhaps even earlier when she learned the phoenix stone she carried had triggered the village's abnormality, she had known she could not stay. Even if the old chief and others had forgiven her, she felt she didn't belong. Momon, the small creature born of phoenix power that had lived with Eclair for years, understood her feelings but didn't know how to console her. Then Lucy stepped forward softly. If you don't know where to go, Eclair, come to our guild. Come to Fairy Tale, she said, smiling and holding out a hand. Eclair looked up at Lucy for a moment, then quickly turned away, avoiding the outstretched hand. Her fingers twitched, but she forced herself not to take it. Lucy is right. Our guild might not be formal right now, but it's warm and welcoming, Chess said, coming up beside her. Harmony, warmth, Lucy began, keeping her hand extended and giving an awkward, forced laugh. Momon's eyes brightened, tempted, but Eclair remained unmoved. After a few seconds of silence, she refused. Thank you for your kindness, but I won't. I hate magicians who bring misfortune, and I hate magician guilds even more. Though her time with Lucy and Chess had been short, Eclair knew they were not the kinds of people she condemned. She was curious about, and even yearned for the guild life they described, but the recent events in the village had hollowed out her courage. Worse, under the residual shock of the Demon King's aura, she had remembered fragments of her past, including a mission she still carried, to destroy the Phoenix. Someone on such a path, she told herself, had no right to enjoy the comforts of a magician's guild. Hey, Eclair! What are you waiting for? The old village chief's voice cut through her thoughts. He stood a short distance away, looking uncharacteristically stern. If you won't go with them, do you plan to stay here shamelessly? Do you know how much trouble you've caused since you came? If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. Get out of here. I don't want to see you, the cause of all this, and don't come back to disturb our peaceful life. The coldness of his words stung. Seeing the usually gentle village chief so angry made Eclair's heart ache. She guessed what he meant, but she didn't reply. Instead, she reached out and quietly, without hugs or loud goodbyes, took Lucy's hand. There was no argument. She simply climbed aboard the magic ship Ultier had summoned, and together with Lucy and Chess, she stepped onto the deck. Only as the ship's circle began to glow and the vessel lifted did Guard Berest, who had remained behind, step forward with a worried face. "Village Chief, is this really all right?" "Keeping her here among those who have become demons would bury her in guilt," the old chief said, wiping at his eyes. "The more we act tolerant and indifferent, the deeper her self-blame will sink. That child has a tenacious will and a love for life. She needs a wider sky." "Lucy-sama and Mr. Chess's guild must be a good place. It must be," he added, voice thick. The old chief stared after the receding ship with tears in his eyes, standing on tiptoe as if wanting to follow. He tried to be proud and stubborn, but couldn't hide the emotion. "Damn this wind! It's making my eyes water." "Bereste, don't look at me like that. I'm not crying," he barked, trying to regain some dignity, though his voice betrayed him. Chapter 200, Suppressing Nazgrel. Disciplinary Committee member Lucy appears. The Magic Council flag fluttered in the wind as the airship followed its planned course toward Magnolia. On a quiet corner of the roomy deck, Lucy held a distraught Eclair in her arms, trying to soothe her. Eclair already knew the old village chief's true intentions, and to keep the villagers from worrying over her, she had outwardly accepted Lucy's invitation. But once aboard the ship, she had confessed the rest. She remembered being a Miko, and she wanted to go alone into Baunda Lee Forest to find the magician Calland and finish what remained. The danger of the Phoenix Stone had to be resolved completely. Chess and Lucy weren't about to let her go alone. With Ultier's help, the airship altered course and soon found Calland's ruined residence, protected by a damaged magic seal. There, Eclair saw Calland's image preserved on a magic crystal, the likeness of the man who had been her birth father over 400 years ago, and learned that the weapon capable of destroying the Phoenix, the Arrow of Exorcism, was currently kept in the Council's possession. Calland knew the ritual, and the tool existed, but Eclair held only half of the Phoenix Stone. She needed the other half to break the seal. Chess again invited Eclair to join Fairy Tale, arguing that a mage guild would be the best place to gather information and grow stronger. He already suspected the other half of the stone was in the hands of the foolish Duke of the Ronica Kingdom to the north, but thought it wise to let Eclair settle into the guild first. He also knew the elimination formula Calland had researched was actually Slayer magic, magic that would destroy the Phoenix but would also erase Eclair, whose blood was part Phoenix. That liberation was an unacceptable end. With a domineering blurt of, "If the Phoenix shows up, kill it," and after Lucy painted a picture of the guild he wanted her to have, Eclair finally let go of the forced strength she'd been holding, threw herself into Lucy's arms, and broke down in bitter sobs. "Keep the Arrow of Exorcism for now," Ultier said to Chess, pressing a sealed antique box into his hands beside the deck railing, "just in case something unexpected happens." Chess looked at the box and raised an eyebrow. "You brought something like this?" he said, then didn't bother with formalities, reached out, slipped the box into a card, and stowed it away. If Eclair was going to join Fairy Tale, he was confident the Phoenix Stone's seal wouldn't be broken. He already had plans to retrieve the other half from Ronica himself. Still, as Ultier had said, an extra layer of security never hurt. With legendary monsters like a Phoenix and the Demon King, you have to be cautious, she added, glancing at the sunset slipping behind the mountains. "I haven't had time to tell the old fogies on the council about this yet," Ultier said, troublingly. "Mr. Yajima has submitted his resignation because of his age, and I'm not sure I can stay much longer either. The chairman and some members have changed their attitude toward you, Chess, but they won't protect Fairy Tale without conditions. So," Chess took in what she didn't say. After Jelal's brainwashing and the stabilization of his mind in prison, Jelal understood the sins of his past and sought atonement. But Ultier had things she couldn't avoid: the past with Grimoire Heart, unresolved ties to Hades, who had once mentored her in Time Arc magic, and Meldy, whom she had led astray when she was young. She wanted to go back and try to pull things back from the edge, even knowing how small the chance of success was. "This sounds like a final farewell," Chess said bluntly. "Have you hit real trouble?" Ultier only shook her head. Her expression said she didn't want to drag Fairy Tale into whatever mess she was about to walk into. Chess stopped prodding and said instead, seriously, whatever happens, live well. Not just for atonement, but for Ulu. She lost you once before. Don't repeat that. Hearing the name Ulu made Ultir's eyes flicker. She gave a solemn nod. I won't throw my life away, she promised, but I don't know what you're planning to do. Chess produced a card and offered it to her with a casual smile. Take this. It might save you in a pinch. She nearly refused, but he pressed it on her until she accepted. Thank you, Chess, she said quietly. We're friends, he replied. Besides, you've helped us plenty. Conversation moved on to lighter topics. Ches asked about Sabretooth. Ultir's new guild had surely been a lot of work, and she complained mildly about her mother's constant visits to the council. Ultir sighed about how her mother even showed up to report when the guild bought a new table. Ches laughed and imitated some of the sillier incidents, and Ultir actually cracked a small smile. There were darker matters, too. Ches thought about Grimoire Heart and who truly posed a threat, the Vice Guild Master Blue Note, or Hades, Precht himself. With his current strength, he couldn't beat Hades in a straight fight. Hades drew power from his demon heart. If the heart could be destroyed first, Hades could be weakened and killed. But Hades' evil aura was worrisome. In the original timeline, Zareth had said that such an aura would attract Acnologia. If war with Grimoire Heart broke out, would the Black Dragon appear? Tenru Island's protection from the First Master aside, this was the real world, and Chess didn't want to gamble with the lives of his friends by relying too heavily on the old plot. He decided it would be necessary to resolve Grimoire Heart's threat before Tenru Island. Perhaps Ultir stirring things up inside Grimoire Heart might be the best way to draw attention early, if she could do it safely. There was still some time before the S-Class Mage exam, time he could use to get stronger. Don't be reckless, Chess warned when she nodded. I won't go looking for death, she answered. They said their goodbyes under the moon and stars. After seeing Ultir off, exhausted from the travel and emotionally drained, Chess decided to go home and sleep. He'd return to the guild the next day to introduce their new members and submit the request. Eclair and Momon, girls both, stayed at Lucy's shabby little rental. The next morning, Chess and Lucy took Eclair and Momon to a popular breakfast spot and gave them a brief tour of Magnolia. The locals' barely concealed disdain for Chess puzzled Eclair and Momon. His reputation here wasn't great. Chess didn't mind being called Guy at their request. They addressed him informally as Chess Guy. Lucy, used to the townsfolk's attitude, amusedly rattled off the local Chess rules she'd heard from Mira and the others, and the image of Chess as a mysterious, powerful card mage began to crack. They soon arrived at Fairy Tale at the edge of town. Eclair and Momon hesitated outside the Grand Guild Hall, nervously excited. Lucy kept telling them everyone in the guild was super friendly, but they still felt reverence and anxiety in equal measure. If nothing went wrong, this would be their home. They were still wondering how to introduce themselves when a loud bang announced their entrance. Hey! We're back! Chess had kicked the guild's door wide open. Is this how you greet people? Eclair blurted, startled. Eclair, it seems rude, but once you join, this is how we do it, Chess said with a grin. Momon straightened up, determined to imitate him. There's no rule like that. Only Chess Gay and Natsu make such a fuss. Lucy tried to diffuse the impression. They're actually, very easy to get along with, honest. She stepped into the guild and stopped. The main hall was chaos. Tables and chairs were airborne, plates clattered, and a chorus of shouts and curses filled the room. Men were brawling, drunks were swinging wildly, and perverts were making fools of themselves. It looked less like a welcoming hall and more like a battlefield. Lucy, maybe joining a mage guild was a mistake, Momon whispered, clutching her skirt. Lucy felt her face go pale. How could she explain this? This is just our daily life, she thought, but saying it out loud would only make things worse. A slipper flew through the air and smacked into Lucy's forehead like a protesting hand. That was the last straw. She exploded. I told you all. Can't you behave yourselves for once? She shouted. Star dress, Taurus form, she cried. A golden magic circle flashed around Lucy. With a sudden, almost comically masculine swagger, she strode through the crowd in a cow-themed outfit and physically waded into the fight. Lucy put both hands between Natsu and Gray's clashing fists, then, thud, delivered a pair of earth-shaking, bone-jarring punches so solid that everyone fell silent. "Hey, no way. Weak little Lucy just stopped Natsu and Gray with her fists," someone muttered. "Ow, ow. Damn Macau. Why'd you punch me?" someone else wailed. "Is this really Lucy? She's got Urza's presence," another voice said in disbelief. Natsu and Gray stood there stunned, mouths agape and eyes wide. "I was hit by Lucy? I was hit by Lucy?" The two stood dumbfounded in the sudden quiet. The moment stretched. Then Mira, standing at the bar with a broken chopstick stuck in her forehead, tilted her head and smiled in that slow, mischievous way of hers. "Chess, Lucy, welcome back." "Huh? Your reaction is way too slow. And is this the time to say that?" Lucy snapped, furious and flustered.